Hey guys. This is part 6 of What If Naruto Was Azula's Bodyguard. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 14. Attempts and Surprises. Team Avatar had stayed the night in the monorail station and taken the first ride out in the morning. The ride was long, but they knew they had to be patient. Katara was the first one to notice. "Look, the inner wall," she said, directing everyone's attention to said inner wall. "I can't believe we finally made it to Ba Sing Se in one piece." "Hey, don't jinx it," Sokka told her. "We could still be attacked by a giant exploding Fire Nation spoon or find out the city's been submerged in an ocean full of killer shrimp." Both Shuya and Akela gave him the "Are you crazy?" "Look. You been hitting the cactus juice again?" asked Toph. It sounded like he had been doing that. "No, that's Choji," he replied, making Shuya snicker and Choji wince at the memory. "Besides, weird stuff happens to us." And as if to emphasize his point, a large man sucking on some sort of corn plant sat down between them with a very dazed look on his face. "What do you think happened to him?" Ino whispered to Shikamaru. "It's too troublesome to think about it," he replied. "That's your answer to everything." Honestly, he could try to come up with a better answer. Then she remembered that she was talking about Shikamaru of all people. "That's enough, you two," Asuma told them. Aang looked away from the window with a downcast expression. Katara saw the expression and decided to cheer him up. "Don't worry, Aang," she told him. "We'll find Appa." "It's such a big city," he replied. "He's a giant bison," Sokka said, joining the conversation. "Where could someone possibly hide him? It couldn't be that hard." They soon got an answer as the monorail passed through the inner wall tunnel, and they saw the city for the first time in their lives. "Dear Kami, it's at least 20 times bigger than Konoha," Choji said in awe as he looked at the gigantic city, with buildings that were spread out for miles. "Hey, Ice-Chewer," Shia called out as she stared out the window. All she could see was buildings that seemed to be everywhere. The streets that ran through all of them looked like veins in a body, all stretching and interconnecting. Perhaps it was more like a maze or a labyrinth. She couldn't decide. "What?" Sokka asked back, pulling his face away from the window. He was already resigned to the fact she was going to keep calling him that. "Would you like some help putting your foot in your mouth?" she asked with an innocent expression. "Shut up." He turned back to the window. They soon came into a monorail station where they disembarked. A spectacular view of Ba Sing Se greeted them as they disembarked. "Back in the city," Toph said as she rubbed Momo's head. "Great. What's the problem?" Sokka asked her. "It's amazing." He had never seen anything like it before. But he now knew why it was the maps always made it quite visible to see. Once you were inside, it was all you could see. "Just a bunch of walls and rules," she answered. "You wait. You'll get sick of it in a couple of days." She knew the truth of it, and they would too, hopefully later than sooner. "Okay, our first order of business is to find some food," Choji declared, patting his stomach. "You had food at the monorail station just before we left," Ino told him. She remembered him scarfing down on the stuff quite vividly. "That was not food," he declared with a harsh expression. "That was fertilizer at best, and something a rat wouldn't eat at worst." "That's harsh," Asuma commented. The last time he checked, all food was okay to Choji. The Akimichi didn't judge, he just ate. "You gotta remember, Asuma-sensei," Shikamaru said. "If an Akimichi isn't a shinobi, he's a food critic. Since Choji's going to be the next clan head, he's gotta be both." Aang stood near the railing with the open view of Ba Sing Se before. He took out the bison whistle and blew. But nothing responded, like he had thought. "I'm coming for you, buddy," he said to himself. As Katara walked up behind him, he turned his head to her. "He's here, I can feel it." "We've got company," Asuma said to him. The monorail had started up again and left the station. It revealed a woman with an extremely creepy smile on the opposite side of the tracks. She quickly made her way over to the group. "Hello, my name is Judy," she introduced herself in a polite, but strange way. "I have been given the great honor of showing the Avatar around Ba Sing Se. And you must be Sokka, Katara, Toph, Asuma, Ino, Shikamaru, Choji, and Shiye." She looked at each one of them as she spoke. Akela began to growl and bark at Judy, like he was warning her to stay away from the group. Akela, heel! Sokka ordered, restraining the wolf just as he was about to attack Judy. Calm down, would ya? She hasn't done anything to us. Welcome to our wonderful city, she continued without missing a beat. Shall we get started? Shikamaru, can you take care of this? Sokka asked as the shinobi as he held on to Akela. My hands are kind of full here. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered before walking over to Judy. We have information that needs to be given to the Earth King, ASAP, he told her. Great, let's begin our tour and then I'll show you to your new home here, she said, seemingly ignoring what had just been said. I think you'll like it. She started to walk away. Sokka managed to calm Akela and then went after Judy. Maybe you missed what the guy said, he told her. We need to talk to the king about the war, it's important. You're in Ba Sing Se now, she replied, with a little excessive amount of enthusiasm in her tone. Everyone is safe here. The group looked at her, but they could do nothing except follow her to a carriage large enough to accommodate them all. They started off and began the tour. This is the lower ring, Judy told them as they passed through it. What's that wall for? Katara asked, looking out the carriage window. She was looking at a wall that wasn't a part of the inner wall. They weren't even close to that wall. Instead, this wall seemed to block off the lower ring from the rest of the city. Oh, Ba Sing Se has many walls. There are the ones outside, protecting us, and the ones inside that help maintain order, their guide told them. This is where our newest arrivals live, as well as our craftsmen and artisans, people who work with their hands. It's so quaint and lively. That's not what I'd call it, Shia said as she and Katara looked out the window and looked at the people in the streets. I'd call it the slums. They could all see it. The clothes people wore not their best. In fact, some of it looked like it was a collection of rags sewn together. There were beggars at practically every corner. In the alleyways, they saw men with weapons stare at the carriage with hostile eyes. Well, you do want to watch your step, Judy agreed. That's putting it mildly, Asuma commented. Why do they have all the poor people blocked off in one part of the city? Katara asked. It didn't seem right to her. They all belonged to the same city. They shouldn't section people off because of how much money they had. This is why I never came here before, Aang said. I always heard it was so different from the way the monks taught us to live. But that wasn't at the forefront of his mind. He looked out the window, thinking about Appa. In a different part of the lower ring, Zuko was walking down a marketplace. He was soon joined by Iroh, who was holding a vase of flowers. I just want our new place to look nice in case someone brings home a lady friend, he said after seeing Zuko's glare, giving him a nudge and a wink. This city is a prison, Zuko said with bleakness in his voice. I don't want to make a life here. He could see the truth all around him. It was obvious to see. The people all around him were trapped here, and now, he was too. Life happens wherever you are, whether you make it or not, Iroh told him, having a more upbeat attitude about their situation. Now come on, I found us some new jobs and we start this afternoon. They walked on, obvious of who was glaring at them. Look at them, firebenders living right under everyone's nose, Jet said with contempt. If he hadn't seen the tea, he would have missed them too. Jet, you saw a man with a hot cup of tea. It doesn't prove he's a firebender, Smellerby told him as she and Longshot came out of the alley. And what if he is? Are we supposed to attack them? I thought we were starting over here, changing our ways. We are, he assured her. When I get the evidence I need, I'll report them to the police and let them handle it. Okay? He wasn't going to attack them outright. He would wait and watch. This is the middle ring of Ba Sing Se. It is home to the financial district, shops and restaurants, and the university, Judy told them as the carriage crossed over a bridge. They had left the lower ring by passing through the wall Katara had seen. The buildings they were now looking at were better maintained than the ones in the lower ring, but there was still some wear and tear on some of them. Sokka heard the last part, and tried to get his point across again. Yeah, we met a professor from Ba Sing Se University. He took us to an ancient underground library where we discovered information about the war that is absolutely crucial for the Earth King to hear. He told the guide. She just smiled the creepy smile. Isn't history fascinating? Look, here is one of the oldest buildings in the middle ring, the town hall on the far side of the city. The carriage stopped, and she got out of the carriage. Okay, something's wrong with that woman, Sokka stated. She only seems to hear every other word I say. It's called being handled, Toph told them. She knew from experience what that felt like. She had it with her parents. Get used to it. This is becoming more troublesome than it's worth, Shikamaru stated. Akela just looked out the carriage to Judy and snarled at her. Jet stood outside a tea shop, looking through the shutters. Inside the tea shop were the two supposed firebenders. Well, you certainly look like official tea servers, the owner of the tea shop told them. How do you feel? Ridiculous, Zuko answered. Both he and his uncle were wearing aprons. If Azula could see me now, she would fall to the floor in laughter, he thought to himself. Iroh struggled to tie the apron strings behind his back without much luck. Does this possibly come in a larger size? He asked. I have extra string in the back, the owner told him as he poured 2 cups of tea. Have some tea while you wait. He left to go get the string, leaving the two with their tea. Zuko just scowled at his tea while Iroh drank his before making a disgusted sound. This tea is nothing more than hot leaf juice, he complained. Uncle, that's what all tea is, his nephew said in a long-suffering voice. They had this conversation before, days before the Avatar had shown himself to the world again. How could a member of my own family say something so horrible? Demanded Iroh. We'll have to make some major changes around here. He took hold of the teapot, walked over to one of the windows and threw out the tea. Jet gave a small gasp and moved out of the way to avoid getting tea splashed on him. Figuring that if he stayed any longer, there was a good chance of getting caught, he disappeared into an alley. The upper ring is home to our most important citizens, Judy told them as they passed lavish houses with giant lawns. It almost looked like something out of a dream. Your house is not too far from here. As they rode through the upper ring, the houses and estates disappeared, and they passed a large wall. What's inside that wall? Katara asked, looking out the carriage window. She could see the roof of a building beyond the wall, but nothing more than that. She could also see 3 men standing in a doorway, watching the carriage pass. And who are the mean-looking guys in robes? Sokka asked, seeing the same men. Inside is the royal palace, Judy answered. Those men are agents of the Daily, the cultural authority of Ba Sing Se. They are the guardians of all our traditions. She neglected to mention that the agents were watching the carriage like hawks as it went by. Can we go see the king now? Aang asked. He was getting tired of all this. He wanted to get the information to the Earth King, and then go look for Appa. Oh no, one doesn't just enter the palace to see the Earth King, she told him, making him feel like a child who asked a stupid question. The members of Team Asuma all shared the same thought. This is getting complicated. It was supposed to be a simple task. Get in, get to the Earth King, and deliver the information. But now, they knew they were being blocked and delayed. Soon afterwards, the carriage stopped, and they got out. Here we are, your new home, Judy said. As the group looked at what appeared to be a modest-looking house, with a simple designed interior, a courier ran and gave her a message. Ino was the first one to enter, followed by Katara and Toph. Shikamaru and Choji waited until Asuma could join them inside. More good news, Judy told them after reading the message. Your request for an audience with the Earth King is being processed and should be put through in about a month, much more quickly than usual. A month? Repeated Sokka. 6 to 8 weeks actually, she clarified, giving them the creepy grin. The group was silent until both Shiye and Ino broke it in unison. What? They yelled at Judy. There is no need to shout, she replied calmly. Please let us go inside. She ushered in the rest. Inside was spacious and there were pillows on the floor to sit on. Isn't it nice? I think you'll really enjoy here. I think we'd enjoy it more if we weren't staying so long, Sokka told her. Can't we see the king any sooner? The Earth King is terribly busy running the finest city in the world. But he will see you as time permits. Aang looked out a nearby window. If we're going to be here for a month, we should spend our time looking for Appa, he spoke. Momo perked up when he heard those words. He missed the sky bison too. I'll be happy to escort you anywhere you'd like to go, she told the Avatar, bowing her head. No, you're staying here, Shikamaru told her. They needed to get information without her around. Yeah, we don't need a babysitter, Toph said, getting up from where she sat and headed for the door. Oh, I won't get in the way, Judy said, moving to block the blind earthbender's path. And to leave you alone would make me a bad host. Where shall we start? They decided to start at a pet store. The minute they went in, Momo went straight for the feed only to be scared off by a cat owl, which then had a snarling match with a killer. I'm sorry, the pet store owner said, but I haven't heard anything about a flying bison. I didn't even know there were any. If someone wanted to sell a stolen animal without anyone knowing, why would they go? Aang asked. That question made Team Asuma looked at him with incredulous expressions. Dear Kami, he actually doesn't have a clue, they thought. It should have been obvious that he had to be a little subtle. But he just went out and said it. Where's the black market? Sokka demanded, not being subtle as well. Who runs it? Come on, you know. He knew that the gaze of the shinobi had swung to him, but he didn't care. He wanted the information. The owner started to sweat nervously when he saw Judy shake her head. That would be illegal, he finally answered. He noticed noise coming from the sides. You'll have to leave now, your pets are causing a disturbance. Momo was trying to take the feed while waving off birds while Akela was still barking at the cat owl. They left the pet store and decided to try the university. I've never seen any sandbenders or nomads around here, a student told them, sitting on a bench. You should ask Professor Zay. He teaches the class on desert cultures. Well, we can't do that since he's still in the library, Sokka thought to himself, but aloud he said. Right, and which of your professors could we ask about the war with the Fire Nation? The student grew nervous as he looked at Judy, who again shook her head. This time, both Sokka and Shikamaru noticed it. They turned their heads to look at her, but she had already stopped moving her head. I don't know. I'm not a political science student. It's not that hard a question, she had told him. Just tell us who to talk to about the war. I have to get to class. The student leapt up from where he sat but tripped and dropped his scrolls. Picking them up quickly, he ran away from them. At this point, Judy had decided that was enough and had them driven back to their house. Well, I'm sorry no one has seen your bison, she told them as they stood on the stairs. Why don't you go get some rest? Someone will be over with dinner later. The carriage rolled away, leaving them alone. They noticed that a person in the house across from them was peeking out from his door. When he noticed that they noticed, he tried to hide. Hey, come with me, Sokka told everyone. They walked across to the other house and Sokka knocked on the door. The man opened the door. You're the Avatar. I heard you were in town. I'm Pong, he introduced himself. Nice to meet you, Pong, Aang greeted. The man sounded friendly enough, and a little nervous too. So, Pong, what's going on with this city? Sokka asked. Why is everyone here so scared to talk about the war? War? Scared? What do you mean? Pong asked as his eyes kept looking around. I can feel you shaking, Toph told him. It's not a good idea to lie right now, Choji warned him. They would know if he was. Look, I'm just a minor government official, he told them in a whisper, like he was afraid someone was listening in. I've waited 3 years to get this house. I don't want to get into trouble. Get into trouble with who? Katara asked in a normal level of voice. She didn't see anything wrong around them. Sure, he said, a finger over his lips. Listen, you can't mention the war here, and whatever you do, stay away from the Daily. He closed the door in their faces. Well, that was weird, Shia said as they went back into their own house. The sun had begun to set as they walked through the door. It had been a long day. Aside from that, something is going on in this city, Shikamaru stated. That guide was pretty much blocking us the entire day. But we really can't do anything, Choji pointed out. We don't have any contacts here. We're literally on our own. That and we did a pretty bad job at interrogating people out there, Sokka admitted. In hindsight, he probably shouldn't have been so blunt. Don't beat yourself up. You did okay for an amateur, Ino told him. You just pressed them too soon. Once he got some experience, he would probably do fine. Dinner soon came and they ate the meal slowly, thinking about what to do. They threw out suggestions, but nothing really seemed to work. Finally, they finished the meal. Aang, Katara, Toph and Shia decided to go to bed, taking Momo and Akela with them and leaving Sokka with Team Asuma. Is there something you need, Sokka? Asuma asked him. Actually, I've had a question that I wanted to ask since I first met you all in the swamp. It had been bugging him for the longest time. Why did you wait this long? Asked Ino. I had the feeling that if I asked the question in front of everyone, I would have caused some bad tension between us. Also, the answer that we got would also somehow cause both Katara and Aang to vehemently deny it, he told her. We wouldn't do that, Aang's voice came from behind the door leading to the bedrooms. Both Team Asuma and Sokka glared at the door. Aang, did the monks ever teach you that it was rude to eavesdrop? The tribesman asked aloud. The door opened and the air nomad walked in with a sheepish expression on his face. Sorry, but I was curious about why Sokka wanted to talk to you guys. Are you still going to ask us? Choji asked Sokka, curious to know what he was going to say. The water paragon sighed. Might as well, it'd probably be better this way. He took a deep breath. Who are Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke? Team Asuma grew silent for a few minutes before Asuma spoke. Kakashi Hatake, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha are all members of Team Kakashi, of which Naruto is a former member, he said, answering the question. Why aren't they here? Aang asked. If they knew the blonde, he would have thought they would be the best in protecting him and his friends. I thought they would be happy to jump at an opportunity to look for him. I think only Guy-sensei knew that answer, Shikamaru answered. That's the question I asked him after Kozan. According to Guy-sensei, it was Lady Tsunade who decided not to bring in Team Kakashi, because of personal feelings. Oh, I see, Asuma said. Suddenly it made a lot of sense. He could see why she would not let them come. They hate Naruto that much? Aang asked with surprise. That question caused Team Asuma to snort in disbelief. Hate him? It's Team Kakashi that wants him back the most. Choji told the airbender. How far would they go to get him back? Sokka asked. He had a bad feeling that he wasn't going to like the answer. If there was a choice between saving your lives and going after Naruto, they would leave you for dead in a heartbeat, Shikamaru stated with absolute bluntness. He had heard about the lengths they had gone to look for the blonde as well as the injuries they had inflicted on the people who insulted him. Aang had an expression of horror on his face when he heard those words. No one would do that, he protested. No one would leave people to die just so they could try and find one person. I rest my case, Sokka said. He knew that those words or some variation of them would be spoken if Aang or Katara were. That was why he didn't want them to be there when he asked the question. Asuma looked at Aang. Yes, they would, Aang, he told the air nomad. They want Naruto back in Konoha and they are willing to do anything to make it happen. If they had to kill you to find him, you would be dead before you realize it. If it was even possible, Aang grew more horrified. But I am the Avatar. They wouldn't kill me, he protested weakly. That would have gone against their mission orders, right? They wouldn't care if you were Kami herself, Shikamaru told him, continuing to be blunt. If killing you was a way to get to Naruto, your successor would be the one to defeat the Fire Lord. The room was silent until Sokka finally broke it. Perhaps it's best we all get some sleep. Everyone agreed with what he suggested and went to their separate bedrooms. But the conversation still haunted Aang throughout the night, even when he did fall asleep. Jet crouched behind a laundry line, watching Zuko and Iroh in their apartment. Would you like a pot of tea? Iroh asked his nephew. We've been working in a tea shop all day, Zuko told him. I'm sick of tea. Sick of tea, repeated Iroh. That's like being sick of breathing. He looked through the cupboards, looking for something. Have you seen our spark rocks to heat up the water? They're not there, Jet said to himself, his hand holding the same spark rocks Iroh was looking for. You'll have to firebend, old man. He then noticed that Iroh was leaving the apartment. Where are you going? His answer was given when Iroh came back in. I borrowed our neighbors. Such kind people, he told Zuko. With 2 strikes of the spark rocks, the fire was lit and the tea was boiling. Damn! Jet swore to himself as he left. I thought that would work. The morning was up and going, as evident by the birds singing. Katara yawned as she walked outside the door. She grabbed the newspaper that was in the front basket, read it, and gave a gasp of excitement. She ran back into the house. I've got it, she declared. I know how we're going to see the Earth King. How are we supposed to do that? One doesn't just pop in on the Earth King, Toph asked, mimicking Judy from where she sat. Speaking of her, we also have to figure what to do with her, Shikamaru added from where he lay on the ground. There had been the suggestion of killing her, but they discarded it in the end. The king is having a party at the palace for his pet bear, Katara told them. You mean platypus bear? Aang asked her from the banister. No, it just says bear. Certainly you mean his pet skunk bear, Sokka said from where he laid upside down against the wall. Akela had a look of distaste when he heard the skunk bear part. Or his armadillo bear, Toph said. Gopher bear? Asked Aang. Just bear, the waterbender repeated herself. This place is weird, Toph stated after a moment of silence. Who had ever heard of just a bear? What's weird about that? She asked from where she lounged near the staircase. I know what a bear is. Everyone, except for the shinobi, looked at her with disbelief. I spent a winter with a mother bear and her cub when I was 5. She saw the disbelief turn into curiosity and knew she had to explain. I got kicked out of the house for the season and was left to fend for myself. I ended up in the forest and collapsed in a cave. When I came to, I was sleeping next to a bear cub and the mother. She smiled sadly at the memory. After that winter, they had left, and I never saw them again. There are days when I miss that cub. He had this little patch of white fur on his left ear that was shaped like a star. We would always roughhouse when we weren't sleeping or eating. Could we get back to the main subject here? Katara asked them, excited about her plan. The palace will be packed. We can sneak in with the crowd. Won't work, Toph declared as she kicked back and relaxed. Why not? Asked the waterbender. It was the perfect plan. Well, no offense to you simple country folk, but a real society crowd would spot you a mile away. You've got no manners, the blind earthbender told her, picking up a pastry and munching on it loudly. Excuse me? I've got no manners? She asked, offended. You're not exactly Lady Fancy Fingers. Also, we were taught manners, Ino said, gesturing to herself and her teammates. She was offended by the fact that Toph made it sound like she had no manners. Her idea of manners is probably different than ours, Shikamaru pointed out to his teammate. She frowned at him, but silently conceded the point. Toph burped and tossed the pastry away. I learned proper society behavior and chose to leave it, she explained. You never learn anything and frankly, it's a little too late. But you learned it, so you could teach us, Aang said, getting an idea in his head. I'm mastering every element. How hard can manners be? He leapt from the banister, grabbed a nearby drape, and put on like a cloak. Good evening, Paragon Sokka, Mississippi Katara Water Tribe, Mr. Saratobi, Miss Yamanaka, Mr. Nara, Mr. Akimichi, Chief Akela of the White Wolves clan, Lord Momo of the Momo dynasty, your Momoness, he said in what he thought was a civilized voice, bowing to everyone. He kept bowing until he accidentally hit Sokka on the head as the tribesman was standing up. The two of them fell to the ground in a heap. Katara and Shuya might be able to pull it off, Toph noted as she stood up and walked over to where they were. But you two would be lucky to pass as busbas. No, Sokka said as he untangled himself from Aang. Shuya stays here. Before anyone, Katara or Aang, could tell him to stop being paranoid, Shuya spoke up. Oh, trust me, Ice Chewer. I wasn't planning on going. I don't think I would really fit in, and besides. She gestured, almost shyly, to her chest. Once they start talking about these, I'll be a wreck. We'll stay here as well, Asuma said, joining the conversation. We'll keep an eye on Shuya and make sure that we're safe. Then let's get to work, Toph said. The rest of the day was spent on shopping and getting ready. The last part Katara and Toph had disappeared into a room alone for. Aang and Sokka started to play a variation on rock paper scissors. Asuma was writing up a mission report and Shuya was talking to Shikamaru, Ino and Choji. Akela was taking a nap while Momo sat by. Finally, the door to the room where Katara and Toph had disappeared to open to reveal Toph and Katara all dressed up. They held the pose for a few seconds before giggling. Wow, you look beautiful, Aang told Katara as he blushed. Katara was about to respond but was stopped when Toph put her fan in front of her face. First rule when interacting in a high-class society, Katara, never talk to commoners, unless you're asking for something, she told her. They started to walk to the door. We'll get in the party and then find a way to let you through the side gate, Katara said to them. Just be careful in there and for Cammy's sake, don't blow your cover, Asuma warned them. Got it, Toph said. The two left, leaving everyone else in the house. Had they stayed a little longer, they would have seen Momo walking across the floor, wearing a curtain like a cape. Jet stood in an alleyway across from the tea shop and watched as one of the city guards went into the shop. Jet! Called out Smellerbee as she and Longshot joined him. We need to talk. What? Oh great, it's you guys, he said when he saw them. Where've you been? I could use some help with surveillance here. Look, Jet. We've been talking and we think you're becoming obsessed with this. It's not healthy, she told him. Oh, really? You both think this? He looked over at the archer in their group. Longshot simply put his hand on Smellerby's shoulder, showing his agreement. We came here to make a fresh start, Smellerby told him. But you won't let this go, even though there's no proof. Well, maybe if you'd help me. If they helped, he could find the proof he needed. Jet, you've got to stop this. Maybe you've forgotten why we need to start over. Maybe you've forgotten about how the Fire Nation left us all homeless. How they wiped out all the people we loved. As he talked, Smellerby and Longshot looked down at the ground as they remembered. If you don't want to help us, I'll get the evidence on our own. Zuko was serving the tea while Iroh poured it. This is the best tea in the city. One of the customers, an off-duty guard, declared. The secret ingredient is love, Iroh told them as he gestured his arms, like he is hugging the tea, or at least the steam of the tea. Looking at how many people were in his shop, the owner looked over at Iroh. I think you're due for a raise, he said in praise. The shop's door slammed open and Jet stormed in. I'm tired of waiting. These two men are firebenders. He shouted, pointed at Zuko and Iroh, who shared a look as he drew his hook swords. I know they're firebenders. I saw the old man heating his tea. Agni. He did see it. Zuko swore to himself, glaring quickly at his uncle. Iroh managed to look sheepish and apologetic at the same time with his expression. The two off-duty guards looked at each other, and then back at Jet. He works in a tea shop, the one with Dao swords said, like it was the most obvious thing. He's a firebender, I'm telling you. Jet shouted. The guards stood up. Drop your swords, boy, nice and easy. Jet didn't listen. He just started to walk towards the accused. You'll have to defend yourself. Then everyone will know, he told Iroh. Go ahead, show them what you can do. Zuko took that as an invitation. No one threatens my uncle when I'm right here. He walked forward and grabbed the guards' Dao swords, drawing them out of the sheath. You want a show? I'll give you a show. He tested Jet's reaction time by hooking his leg behind a table leg and pushing the entire table at the freedom fighter. Jet sliced the table apart, and then jumped over it. When he landed, he swung at Zuko, making him jump backwards onto a table. Jet cut the table in half, and when Zuko stayed on one side of the table, balancing on one foot, he sliced off the table legs. Zuko leapt high in the air before coming back down and swing his borrowed swords at Jet's feet. Jet flipped backwards to avoid the strike. He landed on his feet and charged Zuko again. The two of them swung their swords at each other, continuing the fight. There was a line already lined up in front of the palace. Katara and Toph walked up to the guard who was checking the line. Invitation please, he said. I think this will do, Toph said, holding up the Beifeng seal. The guard wasn't impressed with what he saw. No entry without an invitation, he told her. Step out of line, please. Look, the Pangs and the Yumsun Hans are waiting in there for us, she replied, putting the seal away. I'm going to have to tell them who didn't let me in. Step out of line, please, the guard repeated, pointing his finger. The two of them did so. They saw a carriage coming up to the entrance. A man got out of the carriage and began walking to the entrance. When Katara saw nearby guards bowing to the man, she got an idea. She grabbed Toph and made her way over to the man. Sir, she began. I'm sorry to bother you, but my cousin lost our invitations. She's blind, she whispered the last part before speaking normally. Do you think you could help us? Our family's inside, and I'm sure they're very worried. His eyes gazed over them before a warm smile. I am honored, he said with a small bow of his head. Is something the matter? A quiet voice, almost hoarse if someone felt nasty, asked from behind them. The man turned and Katara and Toph saw who was talking. Behind the man stood three people that were about the same age as Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji. The one who had spoken stood in the middle. He had red hair and light green eyes, almost the same color Toph's eyes had. He wore a crimson coat. When the wind blew, it was shown that he wore dark pants with a pair of laces on each leg, one below the waist and the other beneath the knee. He wore a couple of buckled belts and a gray vest with one strap over his left shoulder. He had a gourd strapped to his back that was held by the vest and the belts. However, the two things that attracted their attention was the fact that his eyes were surrounded by black rings and he had a symbol the color of blood on his forehead above his left eye. The person on the right of the first person was a young woman. She had green eyes and blonde hair, darker than Ino's, which was tied into 4 separate ponytails. She wore a black short-sleeved kimono that had slits along the sides. She also wore black fingerless gloves and a red sash around her waist. She had what appeared to be some sort of iron club on her back. The third person was a young man. What he wore was simple enough. He wore black trousers and a black top with long sleeves, also with a red sash around his waist. He wore a black hood that covered his head and looked like it had cat ears. What was truly odd about him was the fact he wore face paint. It was purple and he had drawn it across his eyes, from cheek to cheek and from the upper lip to his chin. What caught their attention was the headband the woman wore, and the hood the second man wore. Both the headband and the hood had the same kind of metal plate the Konoha shinobi had, but the symbol was not a leaf. Instead, it showed a symbol of an hourglass figure with a thin rectangle above it. Not at all, the man Katara had spoken to said. These 2 girls lost their invitations and have family waiting inside. They had asked for my help. Very well, the red-haired teenager spoke, like he was approving of what was happening. Let's get inside. People will start looking if we stay here, the woman said. She kept looking around, like she was expecting an ambush. Follow me, please, the man told them. He walked up to the guard, who bowed to him and let him pass. Katara and Toph were tempted to blow raspberries at the guard as they passed, but a simple look from the red-haired man discouraged them. Inside the palace ballroom, people stood together in groups and made small talk. In the center of the room was a long table, and at the end of the table sat a big, brown bear. The bear was eating everything in front of him, much to the disgust of the 2 men sitting beside the bear. He's taking all the good stuff, the older man complained, wincing at the bear's eating habits. Quiet. You don't know what I had to do to get seats this near the bear, the younger man hissed. The bear had then smacked away the food in front of him and leapt for the roasted meal in front of him, eating like an animal. A waiter came by with some food. Excuse me, sirs, he told the 2 men. But the Earth King wanted the bear near the best food. If you'll excuse me. He held the food under the bear's nose, getting his attention. Slowly, the waiter forced the bear back to the end of the table where his seat was by using the food's delicious smell. Once the bear was seated, the food was placed in front of him. Here you are, sir, the waiter told the bear. The Earth King wants the catering staff to tell you to mind your manners. So please be careful about how you eat. You wouldn't want the Earth King to be mad at you, would you? The bear seemed to understand what he was saying, because he nodded and then ate the food in front of him with a little more care. The waiter walked away to continue his job. At the entrance, Katara and Toph had arrived with the man and the 3 others. It's beautiful, isn't it? The man asked the group. By the way, I'm Longfeng. I'm a cultural minister to the king, he introduced himself to Katara and Toph. I'm Kwamai, Katara introduced herself. And this is, Dumb. Gesturing to Toph, who yanked on a string attached to Katara's headdress, making her wince in pain. Now where is your family? I'd love to meet them. He looked around, trying to see if he could spot them. Katara took a quick look around, suddenly nervous. I don't see them right now. But I'm sure we'll find them soon. She grabbed Toph and started to walk away. Thanks for all your help. When they looked away, he suddenly appeared in front of them. Don't worry. As your escort, it would be dishonorable to abandon you ladies without finding your family first. We'll keep looking. Katara and Toph were in a pinch. They tried to think of a way out when the red-haired teenager spoke up. Perhaps they don't wish to appear incompetent to their family. Losing their invitations would qualify as incompetence, he said. Katara nodded in agreement, latching on to what he said. Truth be told, sir, she said to Longfeng, this is our first party where we were going to be treated as adults. That's why we were alone outside. If our parents discovered that we had lost our invitations, they'll say that we're still too immature for these kinds of parties. No kid wants to appear like that in front of their parents, the face-painted man said, sounding like he knew what that was like. I understand, but I still must help you find them, Longfeng said. We will simply tell your parents that you ran into me, and we began to have a conversation. He continued walking in front of them, and they followed. Aang, Momo and Sokka hid behind a lion statue, watching a side entrance. Where are they? Aang asked, as he and Sokka peeked out to look at the entrance. Katara and Toph should have gotten there by now. I don't know, Sokka said as they went back behind the statue. They might have been held up. We need to improvise. What about them? He asked, looking at a group of busboys. Toph said we could pass as busboys. Sounds like a plan, the tribesman agreed. We just have to be careful. The door to the tea shop shattered as Zuko went through it. That was a kick I didn't expect, he thought as he landed in the street. His opponent had managed to surprise him by kicking him hard in the chest, which sent him flying to the door. Jet went after him and swung his hook blades at him. He managed to block them using the hilts to stop them from getting closer. You must be tired of using those swords. Why don't you go ahead and fire bend at me? Asked Jet, trying to get to lose his temper. Does this rock-headed idiot realize he's fighting a Dao Blade's master? He had been trained by Pian Dao. He knew how to handle swords. Please, son, you're confused. Iroh shouted from the doorway as the two broke the hold they were in and fought in the streets. You don't know what you're doing. Bet you wish he'd help you out with a little fire blast right now, Jet told Zuko, hooking the ends of his swords together and swinging them around like a flail. He pushed Zuko back until the Dao sword wielder used one of his swords to stop the flail-like attacks, trapping it in the pavement. You're the one who needs help, Zuko told him. Both letting go of their respective stuck swords, Jet tried to attack but pulled it back as Zuko advanced, swinging at his head. He bent backwards to avoid the sword strike, the piece of wheat in his mouth chopped in half. He quickly regained his balance and leapt back to a nearby well. You see that? He called out to the people who were nearby. The Fire Nation is trying to silence me. It'll never happen. Using his remaining hook sword as momentum and the well's wooden beam as an anchor, he swung himself at Zuko into a flying kick, starting the fight up again. Both Sokka and Aang had managed to get into the party as busbas, with Momo hiding under Aang's hat. The air nomad was pouring drinks when he heard a voice behind him. Hey, you with the pitcher, the voice called out. He turned around and saw the man with face paint. Fill her up. He held out a cup. Aang wordlessly poured a drink. The man took a sip, nodded in appreciation, and walked away. Sokka soon walked past with a tray of food. Where are Toph and Katara? The airbender asked in a low voice. I don't know. I haven't seen them, Sokka replied. Ah. I wish Shikamaru or Ino were here. They'd be great at helping us find the Earth King. They knew how to do this kind of stuff. But they'd have more trouble fitting in than us, Aang replied, reminding him. They said so themselves? Yeah, I know. Just keep looking for the Earth King. I don't know what he looks like. Momo's tail began to wave in front of Sokka's face. You know, royal, flowing robe, fancy jewelry, he said as he grabbed the tail tightly and pulled it back down, making Aang's hat squirm. That could be anyone, Aang said as he looked out to the crowd. He saw a lot of people, but he didn't anyone who looked like the Earth King. Another crab puff, please, Toph asked, standing next to them. You found us, he exclaimed as Sokka served a cream puff. I'd know your little footsteps anywhere, Twinkle Toes, she told him, making him blush. Thanks for letting us in, Sokka said to his sister with obvious sarcasm as she joined them. Sorry, but the guy who escorted us won't let us out of his sight, she told him. What guy? They both looked around, but Long Fong had disappeared. Excuse me, the blonde-haired woman said as she stood next to Sokka. A crab puff, please. Sokka extended the tray towards her, and she took one. Thanks, she said before walking away. Have you guys seen the king? Sokka asked the girls. No, we haven't, Katara said, shaking her head. He gave an irritated sigh. Next time, we bring Team Asuma with us, he declared. They knew this kind of stuff. That was when Ju Di showed up. What are you doing here? She demanded, the creepy smile not on her face for once. You need to leave immediately, or we'll all be in terrible trouble. She tried to push Sokka away, but he used the tray as a shield, spilling the crab puffs. Not until we see the king, he told her. They were going to see him, no matter what. You don't understand. You must go. She pushed Sokka onto Aang, who spilled the pitcher he was carrying onto a guest who screamed in surprise. She looked over to who had spilled the drink on her makeup ruined. Sorry, Aang apologized. No, don't shout. He dried her without thinking using airbending, making his hat fly off. The result for the guest was a rather spiky outfit and hairstyle. Seeing what happened, Sokka groaned quietly. Oddly, or predictably enough, her reaction was something else. The Avatar, was what she said. Oh, I didn't know the Avatar would be here. When she said that, she got everyone's attention and a small crowd had circled around him. This made a revealed Momo go for the hat on the floor and scurry away. Meanwhile, the smile on Judy's face had melted away, replaced with a look of dread. He gave a nervous grin and waved to the people around him. For some reason, Toph and Katara had disappeared. You keep their attention while I look for the king, Sokka whispered into his ear. They might as well use it to their attention. Watch this, everybody, he called out as the tribesmen moved away. He leapt out of his busby uniform and high into the air. He landed on the table and by bending the drinks out of people's cups, put on a show with multicolored drinks. Impressed and awed, the people clapped at the show. Even the bear approved. Hey look, dinner and a show, the man with face paint noted as he and the other stood against the wall. He then looked over at the bear. Is anyone else besides me wondering what a bear is doing in a ballroom? No, we're just wondering why you haven't shut up yet, the woman replied, making him scowl. Enough, the red-haired teenager told them both quietly. They didn't say anything else. The sword fight between Zuko and Jet raged on. The fight was attracting a crowd. Somehow, the two of them ended up back to back. But that didn't stop them. They just kept swinging at each other from the sides, trying to get to the opponent behind them. Before things could continue, 2 Daily agents had appeared from the crowd. Drop your weapons! One agent ordered, getting everyone's attention. The swordsmen broke apart. Arrest them, Jet told the Daily. They're firebenders. This poor boy is confused, Iroh told the agents. We're just simple refugees. This young man wrecked my tea shop and assaulted my employees, the tea shop owner said, pointing at Jet angrily. It's true, sir, we saw the whole thing, one of the off-duty guards supplied. This crazy kid attacked the finest tea maker in the city. Iroh blushed. Oh, that's very sweet. The Daily agents walked up to behind Jet. Come with us, son, the second one told him. He swung his sword at one of them but was quickly disarmed. The 2 agents forced Jet's hands behind his back and put him into handcuffs made from the stones of their rock gloves. You don't understand, Jet yelled at them as they dragged him away. They're Fire Nation. You have to believe me. He was put into the carriage and rode off. Amongst the crowd, Smellerbee and Longshot quickly walked. Zuko turned back to the off-duty guard from whom he had taken the Dao swords from. Sorry about that, he said, handing the swords back and leaving with Iroh. Just as he left, he thought he saw someone with blonde hair in the crowd. But he blinked and the person was gone. A gong sounded as the Earth King was carried in a large, curtained palanquin, along with guards. Sokka got closer to the front of the crowd to make sure it was the man they were looking for. The palanquin was put down and a line of guards stood in front of it. Aang! Called out Sokka. The Earth King! Now was their chance. Aang was still putting on a show, this time with multicolored bubbles and with the bear trying to grab them. Turning around and letting the bubbles disappear, he bent an air scooter and rode it down the length of the table, making Sokka groan quietly. Not like that, he thought. Greetings, Your Majesty, the air nomad called out. As he flew by, people grabbed their food and drinks and pulled them out of the way. The curtained palanquin was picked up and quickly walked out of the ballroom while a line of guards stood at the end of the table. Noticing that the Earth King was leaving, Sokka broke through the crowd and went after the palanquin. As he moved, his eyes went back to the crowd and what he saw made him freeze. Naruto himself, in formal clothing, was just standing there in the crowd. When the blonde saw his gaze, he smiled and gave a little wave. 2 Daily agents grabbed the tribesman at that point and took him out of the room. The same happened to Toph, Katara, and Momo. Aang reached the end of the table and made a dismount, but it wasn't the Earth King that greeted him, it was the man who escorted Katara and Toph. Avatar, it is a great honor to meet you, he said. I am Long Feng, Grand Secretariat of Ba Sing Se and head of the Daily. I would like to talk to you. Your friends will be waiting for in the library. He walked away. Aang got off the table and followed. Neither one noticed that 3 people also left the ballroom and who were also discreetly following them. The door to the library slammed shut, making it dark except for a pair of lights at the door and a heath behind Long Feng, which burned green fire. Why won't you let us talk to the king? Sokka demanded, out of his busby uniform. We have information that could defeat the Fire Nation. The Earth King has no time to get involved with political squabbles and the day-to-day minutiae of military activities, Long Feng told them, sitting down in front of them. This could be the most important thing he's ever heard, Aang said. They had an advantage over the Fire Nation. What's most important to His Royal Majesty is maintaining the cultural heritage of Ba Sing Se. He placed emphasis on the word cultural. All his duties relate to issuing royal decrees on such matters. It's my job to oversee the rest of the city's resources, including the military. So, the king is just a figurehead, Katara said, realizing what that meant. He's your puppet, Toph accused the man. Oh no, said Long Feng, raising his hands in defense. His Majesty is an icon, a god to his people. He can't sully his hands with the hourly changes of an endless war. But we found out about a solar eclipse that will leave the Fire Nation defenseless, Sokka told him, hoping he'd listen. You could lead an invasion. Enough. He cut him off. I don't want to hear your ridiculous plan. It is the strict policy of Ba Sing Se that the war is not mentioned within the walls. Constant news of an escalating war will throw the citizens of Ba Sing Se into a state of panic. Our economy would be ruined. Our peaceful way of life, our traditions would disappear. In silencing talk of conflict, Ba Sing Se remains a peaceful, orderly utopia. The last one on this planet. You can't keep the truth from all these people, Katara told Long Feng. They have to know. I'll tell them, Aang declared, angry with the man and what he said. I'll make sure everyone knows. Long Feng walked up to Aang. Until now, you've been treated as our honored guest. He bowed down to look Aang in the eye. But from now on, you will be watched every moment by Dai Li agents. If you mention the war to anyone, you'll be expelled from the city. He walked back to the heath. I understand you've been looking for your bison. It would be quite a shame if you were not able to complete your quest. Aang scowled at him. It was blatant blackmail and everyone there knew it. Now, Judy will show you home, he said. The door to the library opened, a woman walked in and stood in front of Team Avatar. Come with me, please, she said to them. The group looked at the woman. What happened to Judy? Katara asked with both surprise and fear. I'm Judy, the woman answered. She wore the same uniform as the first Judy. But it was a different woman, evident by her face and hair. But she wore the same creepy grin. I'll be your host as long as you're in our wonderful city. Long Feng went for the door. If you'll excuse me, I've neglected my duties as a host long enough, he told them. I have guests to entertain. That will no longer be required. The red-haired teenager's voice rang out in the library. He and the other two stepped out of a darkened corner. The thought that both Team Avatar and Long Feng had was how did they get in? How long have you been there? Long Feng demanded. Since the beginning, the teenager said, staring at the man with cold eyes. That's impossible. My agents would have noticed your presence. The man wearing face paint smirked. He raised his right hand and wiggled his fingers. Dai Li agents flew from the walls and the ceiling and landed in a pile in front of Long Feng, their necks all clearly broken. You mean these guys? He asked. Or do you mean the ones outside the door? The woman asked, pointing. Everyone, minus Judy 2.0, who just stood there in a pile of bodies, smiling, looked towards the open door and saw the headless bodies of more Dai Li agents. How did you? Long Feng tried to ask, stunned that Dai Li agents were so effortlessly killed. It is always wise to never underestimate a foe, the teenager told him. We have heard your ways of how you run the city. If you wish to wallow in ignorance, we will not stop you. His gaze hardened. But we will put our lives into your hands if you choose to do so. I will not trust a man who controls a city through fear and denial. Long Feng snorted in derision. And where will you go? You cannot leave this city unless I allow it. I could make you rot in the dungeons. He smiled what he thought was a dangerous smile. The teenager narrowed, and that was when Team Avatar saw something amazing happen. The cork on the gourd he wore popped off and sand flew out of it. The sand flew over to Long Feng, wrapped itself around his neck, and lifted him up into the air. It brought him back towards the teenager, holding the Grand Secretariat in front of him. You would do well to watch how you insult people, he told Long Feng. It would be so easy for me to snap your neck. The sand tightened around his neck, making him start to choke. But I will not. The sand released him, sending him crashing to the ground. As for your question, we will go with the Avatar. Me? Aang repeated, surprised by the words. The teenager nodded. He and the others walked over to Team Avatar. We should leave now, the man wearing face paint said. Otherwise, things might get nasty. Agreed, Sokka said. They were about to leave when Long Feng spoke. Why did you spare me? he asked the teenager. You bore me, he answered without looking back at him. There is no challenge in fighting a rat who desperately wants power. With that insult said, they left the library and the royal palace. Who are you guys? Toph asked as they made their way back to the house. It was a long walk, and they didn't have the carriage. But they wanted to get out of there, so they made it count. The people who pulled your rear ends out of the fire, the man with face paint answered, like it was completely obvious. That's who we are. That's not an answer, Toph declared. The people, few as there were, on the street looked at her when she shouted, but she ignored them. And your point is what, exactly? Will you knock it off? The woman said to him, completely exasperated by what he was doing. We are friends of friends, the teenager told Toph, his quiet voice somehow filling the air around them. That is who we are. That's even more cryptic, Katara said. But the truth, nonetheless. The rest of the walk was silent as no one else had anything to say. The sky was dark, and the stars seemed barely visible against the lights the city had lit. The walk finally ended at their destination. We're here, Sokka announced as they stood in front of the house. He walked in and saw that Team Asuma and Shiya were still up. So, how did the mission to talk to the Earth King go? Ino asked him as the others came in behind him. We botched it, thoroughly and utterly botched it, he answered. Akela padded over to him, pressing his weight to the tribesman's side. It couldn't have gone that bad, Shiya said. Well, we did learn that if we are going to do something like this again, Aang's not coming, he stated with absolute surety. Hey! Aang protested as he walked by. It wasn't my fault. You blew our cover so badly that there was no way we could about it, and because of that, we had to improvise, the water paragon told him. I panicked, he protested. Besides, you were the one who made spill the pitcher. You blow-dried that lady with airbending, ruining our cover. You should have gotten her a towel. And then you just went right up to the Earth King, scaring him away. The two of them scowled at each other before Aang finally looked away. We did learn something else, Toph said as she sat down on the floor. We learned that the Earth King is a puppet. The real power is with Long Feng and the Daily. She started to take the stuff in her hair out. She felt like a doll and she hated it. On the upside, we made some new friends, Katara said as she did the same. She looked back outside the door, and that the people she was talking about were still outside. Aren't you going to come in? She asked. The three people entered the house. When they saw who it was, Team Asuma immediately stood up from where they sat. Lord Kazekage, Asuma said to the teenager, bowing. I am not your Kage. You need not bow to me, he replied, gesturing silently for them to stop. Hey, little boy, the woman said to Shikamaru. How have you been? Hello to you too, troublesome woman, he replied, a small, almost tiny, smile forming on his lips as he spoke. Wait, you guys know each other? Aang asked, looking back and forth between the two groups. Well, we did say we were friends of friends, the man with face paint said with a grin. Hang on, time out, Shiya said, raising her hand, getting everyone's attention. Could we get some names, please? She asked them. Of course, the teenager agreed. Long Feng never actually introduced us. Aang, Katara, Sokka, Toph, and Shiya, Asuma began. This is the Godame Kazekage, Gara no Sabaku. The lady is his sister, Temari. And the man is his brother, Kankuro. They are shinobi who are from Sunagakure, the village hidden in the sand. Is the Kazekage anything like the Hokage? Sokka asked. It sounded familiar, but he wanted to be sure. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered to himself. The Kazekage is the leader of Suna, just like the Hokage is the leader of Konoha. You're a Kage? Katara asked. But you're their age. She gestured to Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji. She never would have thought a leader of shinobi would be so young. It doesn't mean he can't be one, lady, Kankuro told her, protective of his little brother. Sorry, she apologized. It's just surprising. Normally, a leader would be a matured adult. You have nothing to apologize for, Gara told her. That was not the first time he had gotten such a reaction, he had gotten one from Long Feng earlier that day. Sokka looked at both Team Asuma and the siblings and noticed they were attempting to have a silent conversation. Hey, I think that after all we've been through tonight, it's probably best if we go to bed, he told Aang, Katara, and Toph. Sounds like a good idea to me too, Shiya agreed, trying to stifle a yawn. She was tired, but she wanted to know what had happened. The others agreed to the idea as well. They went to the bedrooms with Akela and Momo. Once Team Asuma made sure they were all asleep, both they and the Sand siblings sat down at the table in the main room. First things first, Asuma said. What are you three doing in the Bending Countries? He asked the Sand siblings. The council thought that it would be best if I took a vacation, Gaara answered. What happened? Ino asked. A Kage doesn't usually take a vacation, not unless they had been injured or something along those lines. An incident, Temari answered. That's all. What had happened was something the Konoha shinobi needed to know right now. How troublesome, Shikamaru groaned. We need to exchange information. Agreed, Gaara replied. Then let's start with this, Asuma said. Naruto Uzumaki has been living in these countries for the past 3 years and is now currently our enemy. That got the Sand siblings' attention. Chapter 15, Struggles and Reunions. Location: Ba Sing Se. It had been a month since Team Avatar and Team Asuma arrived in Ba Sing Se and met up with the Sand siblings. Ever since they discovered that Long Feng held the power and that they were being watched all the time, they couldn't really do anything. Therefore, they tried to make the best of it. Sokka, Shikamaru and Kankuro had managed to land themselves in a poetry class and proceeded to have a 3-on-1 haiku duel with the teacher. They were doing pretty well until Kankuro flubbed it and added an extra syllable. At that point, they were tossed out of the building. At one point, Katara had managed to convince the other girls, including Shuya, that they needed a girls' day out at a spa. It had been going well, until they ran into another group of girls. The other girls took one look at Shuya's bust and let loose the mocking and the insults. She tried to ignore them, but they then started to poke her bust, wondering aloud if they were actually real or fake. It was then Shuya broke down and began to cry, causing the girls to leave the spa. Unfortunately, the other girls followed them onto a bridge, continuing with the mocking insults. At this point Toph had enough. She bent a hole in the stone bridge beneath the rude girls, making them fall into the river. Katara helped by bending the river into sending the girls faster downriver. They cheered Shuya up afterwards, each telling her that they were a little jealous of her bust. She smiled at that and went back to her normal self. Aang, Gaara, Asuma and Choji also got into a little adventure of themselves. As they walked around the city, they came across a zoo that had seen better days. After listening to the zookeeper, Aang had the brilliant idea to let all the animals out and did so even when Asuma and Choji said it was a bad idea. Gaara just stayed silent. The result was rampant chaos throughout the city. The animals caused trouble everywhere and caused people to panic, especially a certain cabbage merchant who was about to scream his trademark complaint and then just gave up. After some initial confusion, Aang managed to herd the animals outside the city and into the farmlands. Once out there, he quickly bent stone walls up from the ground and made a new, spacious zoo. Although some house pets were caught in the zoo, they were quickly brought out and people enjoyed the new zoo. Aang still got smacked upside the head 3 times in a row for the boneheaded move he made. For the day and a half, he had a bright red handprint on the back of his head. However, it wasn't all just fun and games. Sokka and Shikamaru had almost literally torn the library of Ba Sing Se apart, trying to find something that could help them get around Long Feng's power. While covering different sections of the library, Sokka had an encounter with Naruto. Flashback, spirits take it! Sokka swore as he slammed a book down on a table. He was glad there was no one nearby to hear his outburst. There has to be a way to get around Long Feng's control. He had been poring through books on the laws of Ba Sing Se, yet he couldn't come up with anything that he could actually use. Perhaps you've been thinking about it the wrong way, Naruto's voice came from behind him. He whipped his head around to see the Fire Nation Paragon leaning against a wall, reading a book. He looked completely at ease, like nothing was wrong. How did you get in? He hadn't heard the guy walk up behind him. Same way as you, through the front door, the blonde answered. He walked over to the table where Sokka was sitting and sat down, closing the book. What's stopping me from calling Shikamaru? Sokka asked, his eyes drifting to his boomerang lying on the table, off to the side. Eyes up here, Sokka, Naruto told him, getting his attention. What's stopping you from calling for Shikamaru is the fact he's on the other side of the library, and if he's called, the only thing he'll find is you on the ground unconscious. Besides, I just want to talk. We have nothing to talk about. They were on opposite sides of the war. By rights, they should be at each other's throats. As a matter of fact, we do, the blonde replied just as firmly. We've both seen the level of corruption in this city, and we both know who's responsible for that. Well, we can't exactly create a revolution in the streets, Sokka replied with dry sarcasm. We'd be arrested by the Daily, companions of the Avatar or not. And he was sure the man would enjoy locking them up and throwing away the key. And therein lays your problem, Naruto told him. Long Feng controls the Daily and as such, holds the power of the city. But your problem can also be your solution. What? What in the name of you did the blonde mean by that? Look at it like this. What would happen to Long Feng if his control of the Daily were taken away? It's food for thought. He stood up from the table and began to walk away. Why are you doing this? Sokka asked him. Why are you helping me? It didn't make any sense. He stopped and turned back to face him. The corruption in Ba Sing Se needs to be destroyed. How it's destroyed is up to you. He walked away from the table. Whether to go deeper into the library or to leave, Sokka didn't know. Turning his attention to the books in front of him, the tribesman noticed that the book Naruto had been reading was still on the table. Picking it up, he noticed that there was a piece of paper sticking out of the book. Turning to the page that had the paper, he read the page and his eyes widened. End flashback. Ever since then, Sokka had an ace in the hole against Long Feng and the Daily. However, due to his paranoia, which was justified, that the Daily would find out, he kept the ace secret. Only he knew what it was. But he did tell the others about his encounter with Naruto. This led to Team Asuma trying to track down Naruto in the city. They finally found him and spent the next few days trailing him. Shia called it stalking. Flashback. They looked at the restaurant. It was almost as old as the city and was quite expensive to eat in, the former they knew from asking around and the latter from just looking at the place. How can Naruto afford to eat in a place like this? Ino asked as they stood at the entrance, off to the side like they were waiting for a table, which they weren't. I don't know, Choji answered. I am sure that Naruto would have been paid if he was with the army that is at war with this kingdom. Anyways, I looked at the menu and despite some of the ingredients, what they're serving is top grade and well worth the price. He could smell what was cooking in the kitchen from where he stood. It made his mouth water and his stomach rumble. From what I understood, the Old Badger Mole has been among the top 5 restaurants in Ba Sing Se since they started ranking restaurants, Asuma told them. He could see all the people sitting down at tables, eating food that looked, and probably tasted, delicious. Excuse me, sirs, madam, a waiter said, coming up to and bowing to them. If you will follow me, please, I'll escort to your table. We didn't have a reservation, Asuma told the waiter. They had just been looking for someone. Yes, we noticed, he sneered at them. He could tell that they weren't really looking for food. They weren't dressed properly. However, we've been told that should you come in at lunchtime, we were to escort you to his table. He turned and walked away, leaving them with no choice but to follow. His table? Asked Ino. Who are we talking about? She got her answer when they were shown to a corner booth where Naruto sat eating. They are here, sir. Thank you. Naruto gave the waiter 4 gold pieces. The waiter took the tip, bowed and walked away. Team Asuma just stared at him as he ate. I took the liberty of ordering food for you 4, he finally told them, looking up at them. Please sit. They did so. What are you doing here, Naruto? Asuma asked, sitting across from the blonde. Eating. You know what Asuma-sensei meant, Naruto, Shikamaru told him. What are you doing in Ba Sing Se? What do you think I'm doing? He asked back with a smirk on his face. I don't know. The other members of Team Asuma were surprised. Shikamaru admitting that he didn't know was not something they didn't want to hear. It made them feel like they didn't have an advantage. Before anyone could say anything else, the food for Team Asuma had arrived. Ino was the first to try what was in front of her, lifting a piece of the meal up and placing it in her mouth. This is good, she declared. Choji took a bite. She's right, he agreed. He had never tasted anything like this before in his life. The Old Badger Mole has been around for quite some time, Naruto told them, sounding like he was amused by it all. I think that they wouldn't keep bad recipes around. Naruto, why would you help us out? Asuma asked, having not touched by his food. You and your princess have been trying to take Aang for a while now. Why would you just turn around and help us? He looked at the Jonin with a neutral expression. I didn't help you. I helped Sokka. Ino scoffed. Right, you helped Sokka. He won't even tell us what he discovered. That had severely annoyed both her and her team. Why wouldn't tell them that information? That was smart of him, the blonde said, praising the tribesman. If he had told you guys, odds are the Avatar would have either said that they go straight for the Earth King right away or would have blabbed the secret where Daily could hear him. Aang's not that bad, Choji defended the air nomad. Really? Asked Naruto. From what I saw in the ballroom, he decided to fly right up to the Earth King, despite being undercover, on that little air ball for the whole world to see. If he was a Konoha shinobi and he pulled something like that, he would have been severely punished. Or have standards changed since I left? He eyed the team from Konoha. Don't get so high and mighty, Naruto. You would have done the same thing, Ino accused him. He had been quite the loudmouth when they had been younger, which had surprised her, and the rest of them, to discover that he wasn't like that anymore. You have a point, Ino, but I knew when I need to keep my mouth shut. In case all of you have forgotten, I had to change my behavior and habits when I joined this war. He threw a look at her. I also knew what the word undercover meant, something he doesn't. Why do you hate Aang? Shikamaru asked him. What did he do that earned your distaste? Naruto looked away from them and focused his eyes on the nearby wall. It's not so much what he did as it's what he is. I don't hate Aang. I may dislike him, but I don't hate him. I hate the Avatar. Aren't they the same thing? Choji asked. No, Aang's just a little brat. The Avatar is a title. Look at the people in this restaurant. He turned his gaze on the rest of the old badger mole and they did the same. For Kami only knows how long, the people on this side of the planet have regarded the Avatar as a savior, someone who could fix all the problems they could fix themselves if they tried. The reason the Fire Nation is winning this war is because people are still waiting for the Avatar to win this war for them. It disgusts me. They don't need the Avatar. They can solve their problems on their own. His face scrunched up in disgust as he spoke, looking at all the people present. That may be true, Asuma conceded as he looked back at Naruto. But you're lying to us, Naruto. That's not all there is to it. There is something else about Aang that makes you dislike him. No, there isn't, the blonde stated, turning back to look at them. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes at Naruto, but then widened them in realization. Yes, there is. You dislike Aang because he reminds you of yourself when you were younger. How could he have missed it? It was so obvious now that he thought about it. Even when you were younger, you had a special ability to change other people's perceptions about life in general. Don't tell us you've become the very same person whose perceptions you wanted to change. How else that you were able to change our views of you? The blonde winced at those words, but it was enough for the other people at the table to see it. It was silent for a few minutes, and then he stood up from the table. Where are you going? Asuma asked him. I'm leaving and I'm making you get the bill, he told them, walking away from them. You leave and we'll come after you, Choji told him. This time, we'll get you. We're the kind of team that was made for capture and confinement. He stopped, looked back, and smirked. Is that right, Fatso? Asuma, Shikamaru and Ino went pale while Choji went red. What did you just call me? He growled. Naruto's smirk grew wider. You still denying that, and saying you're just big-boned. Face it, Akimichi, you're a fat ass, he taunted the shinobi. Choji let out a roar of rage and leapt for him. The blonde just stepped to the side and let him crash into another table. This went for a few more minutes as Naruto caused Choji to destroy more of the restaurant, while the rest of Team Asuma tried to calm him down. When that finally happened, they were surrounded by the staff of the old badger mole and Naruto was nowhere to be seen. End flashback. To help repay for the damages, Team Asuma had to work as dishwashers in the kitchen for 3 days. After they had finished that, they tried to look for Naruto but only to fail. They were sure that they would find him again. All they had to do was keep looking. During all this action, Aang decided to start the search once again for Appa. Sokka had decided to help by trying to paint pictures of Appa for the missing posters, frowning as he worked. He sat on the floor next to Akela while Toph lounged nearby, Momo licking her foot. Kankuro had borrowed 2 tables and placed them together and against the wall. He sat there, working on something that nobody, aside from his brother and sister, really knew was. Shikamaru and Temari were playing shogi with Gaara keeping an eye on them, a combination of watching both of their strategies and making sure Shikamaru stayed on his side of the board. Due to an incident in Suna that involved a game of stripped shogi, both Gaara and Kankuro agreed that one of them should always keep an eye on the two whenever they were near a shogi board. The front door opened, letting Aang, Katara, Asuma, Ino, Choji and Shiye in. We found a printer to make our posters, Katara announced, holding a poster of Appa. It was professionally done and gave a good image of what Appa looked like. Sokka looked up at the poster. Good to know, because I don't think this is going to work. He held up a painting to emphasize his point. Sokka, the arrow is on his head, Aang told him. Katara tried to hold in her laughter at her brother's attempts at drawing the sky bison. It was horrible to say the least. See what I mean? He asked the wolf beside him. Akela nodded in agreement. It's not that bad, Kankuro said without even looking up from what he was working on. Yeah, it looks just like him to me, Toph said. Okay, you're not even looking in this direction, Sokka told the Suna shinobi, who was indeed still looking at his workbench. And why do you feel the need to do that? He asked the blind earthbender. Let's stick with the professional version, Katara suggested. No complaints here, he told her, ripping up the poster he held on his hands. Come on, let's get busy, Aang told them, holding stacks of posters in his hands. Well, he's certainly upbeat, Temari noted, looking up from her game. It's troublesome, Shikamaru told her, moving a piece. Checkmate. She looked at the board. Damn it, you always do that. She reached for the sash around her waist with a small smirk on her face. I guess I should reward you. Gaara's gaze hardened and Kankuro whipped his head around to look at them. I don't want to run down the street to avoid becoming a eunuch because of you, troublesome woman, Shikamaru told her, avoiding the gazes of her brothers. That already happened once. Oh, you're no fun, she said, putting her hands down. She was smiling more fully now, happy to see the Konoha shinobi squirm. Hey, can you and the lazy ass save the honeymoon for later? Shia asked the two of them. Look at the arrowhead. He's practically vibrating where he's standing. She pointed at Aang, who was indeed practically vibrating with barely contained energy. Perhaps it is best if we went to work, Gaara told them. That was all Aang needed to hear. He was out of the door with Momo before anyone could blink. The two of them flew over the city, dropping posters as they went. It was another day in the tea shop. Both Iroh and Zuko were serving tea, and judging by how many people were in the shop, they liked the tea. But things soon became different. So, you're the genius behind this incredible brew, a richly dressed customer told Iroh after drinking some of the tea, standing up from the seat he was in. The whole city is buzzing about you. I hope Pao pays you well. Good tea is its own reward, Iroh told him. It was something he believed in. But it doesn't have to be the only reward, the customer replied. How would you like to have your own tea shop? He was stunned by the offer. My own tea shop? This is a dream come true. Having overheard the last part of the conversation, Pao decided to join in. What's going here? Are you trying to poach my tea maker? He demanded. Sorry, Pao, but that's business for you. Am I right? The customer asked, laughing a little. Mushy, if you stay, I'll make you assistant manager, Pao told Iroh. Wait, senior assistant manager. I'll provide you with a new apartment in the upper ring. The tea shop is yours to do whatever you want, complete creative freedom, the customer told him. I even get to name the shop? Iroh asked. Creative freedom was not something he was expecting. He would have thought the man would insist on a particular name for the shop. Of course. Senior executive assistant? Tried Pao. Iroh simply handed him the teapot in his hands and bowed to the customer. Pao groaned and walked away. Did you hear, nephew? Iroh asked to a passing Zuko. This man wants to give us our own tea shop in the upper ring of the city. That's right, young man, the customer agreed. Your life is about to change for the better. I'll try to contain my joy, Zuko told him with heavy sarcasm. He slammed the tray of tea he held onto a table and went outside the tea shop, leaning against the wall. What in the name of Agni are we doing? They had been in Ba Sing Se long enough for his hair to grow slightly shaggy, and yet, all they'd done was serve tea. Is this my destiny now? Was he to serve tea to people until he died? That was when he saw something floating down through the air. He grabbed it to see that it was a poster of the Avatar's bison. He quickly looked up but saw nothing. He climbed to the roof of a nearby building to get a better look but saw no one. I swear this moron has no understanding of the words discreet and subtlety, Naruto's voice spoke from behind Zuko. He turned around and sure enough, Naruto was there on the roof. Naruto noticed him as well. Hey Zuko, he said in greeting. Love what you did with your hair. What are you doing here, Naruto? Zuko asked him carefully. How the blonde get into Ba Sing Se, and more importantly, what was he doing in Ba Sing Se? Well, I'm currently wondering just how idiotic the Avatar is. Doesn't he know that this will just get the attention of the Daily? He looked at Zuko thoughtfully. So, what are you going to do about it? What are you talking about? Zuko, you've been going after the Avatar for 3 years now, and you're just going to let an opportunity like this slip by. His eyes widened slightly in realization. This was indeed a golden opportunity. If there were posters that were giving information about the Avatar's bison, it must mean that the Avatar was here, in Ba Sing Se. But he knew he could say that to Naruto, certain that he would somehow report it to Azula. What I do is none of your concern, he finally said. Hey, it's your choice. It just seems like you've been given an easy chance to capture the Avatar. All you have to do is get the sky bison, the blonde shrugged. Well, do what you want to do. He walked over to the edge of the roof and stepped off, falling to the ground. Zuko quickly made his way over to the edge to see if Naruto was alive, only to see no one on the street below. Everyone was doing their own thing. Kankuro was still working on something. Toph was throwing a ball against the wall. Shikamaru was teaching Shiya how to play shogi. Ino was doing some flower arranging. Choji was checking the supplies they had recently bought. Asuma was sharpening his chakra blades. Temari was checking her equipment. Gaara just sat in a corner, waiting. Sokka and Katara were playing a game involving tiles. Aang walked through the front door with Momo. I just finished dropping all the leaflets. Has anyone come in with news about Appa? He asked as he ran to where Katara and Sokka were sitting. It's only been a day, Katara told him, focusing on the tiles in her hand. Just be patient. He did sit down, but when they heard knocking on the door, he stood right back up. Wow, you're right, he said. Patience really pays off. He ran back to the door. He opened it, revealing a visitor that they were not expecting. Judy? He asked, staring at their guide. Her creepy grin was plastered on her face. Judy, the one they actually knew, walked into the house. Hello, Aang, and Katara, and Sokka, and Toph, and Shikamaru, and Ino, and Asuma, and Choji, and Gaara, and Temari, and Kankuro, and Shiya. She greeted them as they gathered up in front of her. Mouthful, Shiya commented. No one paid attention to her. What happened to you? Sokka asked as he placed a restraining hand on a snarling Akela. The wolf still did not like the woman in front of them. Did the Daily throw you in jail? What? Jail? Repeated Judy. Of course not, the Daily are the protectors of our cultural heritage. But you disappeared at the Earth King's party, Toph said. They didn't see her when they left and hadn't seen her since, until now, that is. Oh, I simply took a short vacation to Lake Laogai, out in the country, she told them. It was quite relaxing. But then they replaced you with some other woman who also said her name was Judy, Katara told her. It had been a little more than creepy to see a different woman with the same name, clothes, and creepy smile. I'm Judy, she replied like it was the most obvious thing there was. Why are you here? Aang asked. She pulled out a poster of Appa. Dropping flyers and putting up posters isn't permitted within the city. Not without proper clearance. We can't wait to get permission for everything, Sokka told her. They wouldn't be able to do anything if they did, they'd just be sitting on their rears all day, waiting for permission to move. You are absolutely forbidden by the rules of the city to continue putting up posters, she told them, that creepy smile still on her face. Aang got into Judy's face, his head literally getting bigger and turning red. We don't care about the rules and we're not asking permission, he bellowed, steam coming out of the back of his head. We're finding Appa on our own and you should just stay out of our way. He slammed the door in her face. That's going to come back and bite us in the rear, Choji noted. He just knew that it would do that. Aang, you shouldn't have lost your temper like that, Asuma told the air nomad. It was never a good thing when someone exploded in that manner. It would always reveal something to the other person, who might try to use it to their advantage. I don't care, he snapped, his head going back to normal size and turning less red. He was sick and tired of the runaround they were going through. From now on, we do whatever it takes to find Appa. Yeah, let's break some rules. Toph cheered before destroying a side of the house via earthbending. The rest of the group was silent. I don't think that was what he meant, Gaara finally said. Let's just get going, Aang said. They could worry about the damages later. One question though, Kankuro said. Did anyone else see his head go big and red or was it just a genjutsu? He pointed to Aang. I saw it, and I don't even know what a genjutsu is, Shia told him. That had been a weird thing to see. We can save it for later, Katara told them. Let's go. They exited the house, unaware that they were being watched by Daily from a nearby roof. I'm extremely disappointed in your work with the Avatar and his friends, Judy. I had hoped that you would be able to control this situation, Long Feng said as he sat in front of the fire. Judy had just recently come to him and told him about what the Avatar was trying to do. I'm so sorry, but they don't trust me anymore, Judy told him, starting to get upset. I don't think I can keep working like this. Judy, the Earth King has invited you to Lake Laogai, he said to her. Her eyes dilated at those words. I am honored to accept his invitation, she said without emotion. Good, now go await further orders. She left the room. He stood up and stared into the fire. If the Avatar keeps searching for his bison, it could upset the delicate balance we've worked so hard to achieve in this city, he said, half to himself and half to the agents in the room. It could even cost us control of the Earth King. Should we take care of him? One of the Daily agents standing at the door asked. No. It's much too dangerous for us to confront him directly. Let's see if we can handle this quietly. Sir, might I suggest we use the boy we took care of? The other agent suggested. Apparently, he and the Avatar have had a history. Long Feng said nothing, he just nodded his agreement. Iroh was packing away clothes when the door to the apartment opened and Zuko walked in. So, I was thinking about names for my new tea shop, Iroh told him. How about the Jasmine Dragon? It's dramatic, poetic, has a nice ring to it. Zuko didn't comment, he simply showed his uncle the poster. The Avatar is here in Ba Sing Se, and he's lost his bison, he stated. The silent meaning behind those words filled the air. Iroh took the poster and looked at it. We have a chance for a new life here, he told his nephew, who walked away once the poster was out of his hands. If you start stirring up trouble, we could lose all the good things that are happening for us. Zuko was staring out the window when he heard those words. Good things that are happening for you. He snapped at Iroh, turning back to face him. Have you ever thought that I want more from life than a nice apartment and a job serving tea? There is nothing wrong with a life of peace and prosperity, his uncle replied. I suggest you think about what it is that you want from your life and why. I want my destiny, he said, walking away. What that means is up to you. Iroh then had another idea for the tea shop. The tea weevil? No, that's stupid. They put up posters of Appa along the walls. We'll split up to cover more area, Sokka decided. Toph, you should come with me, he told the blind earthbender. Why? She demanded. Because you think I can't posters on my own? She yanked the paintbrush out of Sokka's hand, swiped a streak of glue on the wall, and slammed a poster onto the glue. However, she had put the poster up backwards. It's upside down, isn't it? No one said a word. I'll just go with Sokka. She handed him back the paintbrush. They split up and went different ways. Katara and Shia were putting up posters near a river when they heard a voice, one Katara knew. Katara? Said the voice. She turned her head and gasped, confusing Shia. Standing behind the two girls was Jet. I think I can help you, he told them. Katara's reaction was to blush in anger, bend the river behind her up into the air, and hurl it at him. Katara, I've changed. He protested before the water sent him flying into an alley. Katara went after him. Tell it to some other girl, Jet. She told him before bending some of the leftover water into ice spikes and throwing it at Jet. I think I'm missing something here, Shia called out. Neither of them paid attention to her. One was trying to make he didn't die and the other was trying to kill him. Jet drew his hook swords to shatter the spikes but was forced back to the end of the alley, which was a dead end. I don't want to fight you. I'm here to help. To prove his point, he dropped his swords, sending them to the ground. Katara looked baffled. Jet then reached for something behind his back, making Katara pin him to the alley wall via more ice spikes. By now, the rest of the group had shown up. Katara, what is it? Sokka asked. He had heard a fight beginning and raced over. Jet's back, she growled, staring at the freedom fighter with hatred in her eyes. He just stared dispassionately back. Oh boy, Aang replied. That wasn't good, especially when Katara was this mad about seeing him. Hey! Shia shouted, getting everyone's attention. I'm pretty sure the rest of us are lost here. Could you please explain who exactly this guy is? I'm with her, Kankuro said. Same, Ino agreed. To her, it was just a stranger pinned to the wall before them. We met Jet a while back, Sokka told them. We didn't leave on good terms. That might have been putting it mildly, as they had left him frozen to a tree after stopping his attempt to destroy a dam. So, we can't trust anything he says, Katara said, glaring at the man in question. We don't even know why he's here, her brother told her. I don't care why he's here. Whatever the reason is, it can't be good. She was prepared to crush the freedom fighter right where he was pinned. I'm here to help you find Appa, Jet finally said. He revealed what he had been reaching for, one of the Appa posters. Open mouth, insert foot, Shia said. No kidding, Ino said. Shut up, you two, Katara told them, throwing a glare at the two of them. She didn't need that at the moment. Katara, we have to give him a chance, Aang said. This just might be the break they needed. I swear I've changed, Jet told them. I was a troubled person and I let my anger get out of control. But I don't even have the gang now. I've put all that behind me. You're lying, Katara said. She could not and would not believe anything that came out of his mouth. Toph walked up to the wall and placed her hand on it, next to him. He's not lying. How can you tell? Choji asked, curious about how she could do that. I can feel his breathing and heartbeat. When people lie, there's a physical reaction, she explained. He's telling the truth. Katara, we don't have any leads, Aang told her. If Jet says he can take us to Appa, we have to check it out. All right, Katara agreed, before pointing a finger at Jet. But we're not letting you out of our sight. She pointed again to emphasize her point. Can you say tension? Kankuro asked with a smirk on his face. I believe you can, Gaara answered, smiling a little. They unhooked Jet from the wall, and he led them to a warehouse. This is the place I heard about, he told them as they entered the building. They looked around, but the place was empty. If this is a trap, Katara warned him, her hand going for her pouch. I told you, I work nearby, he replied, stopping her. Two guys were talking about some giant furry creature they had. I figured it must be Appa. He was here, Toph called out. She was holding a clump of white fur. They all gather around her. She gave the clump to Aang, who felt it. We missed him. He could tell just by how the fur felt in his hand. We're going to call in Team Kakashi, Asuma stated. They're the tracking team. But it might be too late, Ino pointed out to her sensei. The trail could already be stale. They took that big thing yesterday, an old man with a broom said as he walked past them. Shipped him out to some island. About time, I've been cleaning up fur and various, leavings all day. What island? Where's Appa? Aang demanded, rushing over to the old man. Foreman said some rich royal type on whale tail brought him up. Guess for a zoo or such. Though, could be the meat be good. We've got to get to Whale Tail Island, the air nomad declared. Where's Whale Tail Island? Both Sokka and Asuma checked their maps. Asuma's map also had the current locations of the other teams. Far, very far, Sokka said, lowering his map. Neither Team Kakashi or Team Guy are close to it, Asuma said. From what he could tell, they were either in the eastern part or the northwest part of the Earth Kingdom. Here it is. Sokka pointed to Whale Tail Island on his map, laying it on the floor. It's near the South Pole, almost all the way home. Aang, it'll take us weeks just to get to the tip of the Earth Kingdom, Katara told the air nomad. And then we'll need to find a boat to get to the island. I don't care. We have a chance to find Appa. We have to try. Must be nice to visit an island, the old man said aloud. I haven't had a vacation in years. Don't you have some more hair to clean up? Katara asked him, irritated that he was interrupting them. There's no need to be rude, Choji told her. She ignored him. Shuffle on, I get ya, the old man replied as he kept walking. No more need for old Sweepy. You're right, Aang, Katara said to the airbender. Right now our first concern has to be finding Appa. We can come back when we have him. All right, let's get moving, Sokka told them, both he and Akela taking the lead. I'll come with you, Jet told them as they started to leave the warehouse. We don't need your help, Katara vehemently replied. Why won't you trust me? He asked before following the rest of the group, leaving Katara, Toph and Shia alone in the warehouse. Gee, I wonder. Like she was ever going to forget what had happened the first time they had met. Was this guy your boyfriend or something? Toph asked her. What? No! She protested. Why would she even think that? I can tell you're lying, the earthbender said in a sing-song voice. Even I can see that, Shia said, a big smirk forming on her face. You know what this means, princess? We're going to have to fish for details later. Katara just walked out of the warehouse. They made their way down the street, not really paying attention to the few people who were passing them. We can take the train to the wall, but then we'll have to walk, Sokka said. Don't worry. On the way back, we'll be flying, Aang told him. We still have to figure out a way to get the three of us out without Long Feng finding out, Temari said, gesturing to herself and her brothers. We'll worry about that when we get there, he replied. He was simply happy to be a trail that would lead them to Appa. We're finally leaving Ba Sing Se, worst city ever, declared Toph. However, things did not go as they had planned. Jet! Cried Smellerbee as she and Longshot came out of a nearby side street. That single word made everyone stop in their tracks. I thought you said you didn't have your gang anymore, Katara told Jet when she heard Smellerbee. I don't, he replied as he turned around, only to be hugged by Smellerbee. We were so worried, she said. How did you get away from the Daily? The Daily, repeated Katara, a shocked expression appearing on her face. I don't know what she's talking about, Jet said in protest. He got arrested by the Daily a couple of weeks ago. We saw them drag him away, Smellerbee explained as the others gathered around. Why would I be arrested? I've been living peacefully in the city. He vividly remembered coming into the city, finding a job, and not causing a fuss about anything. He knew that was what happened. Toph knelt to the ground between them, placing her hand on it. This doesn't make any sense, she announced. They're both telling the truth. That's impossible, Katara said. One of them had to be lying. Nothing is impossible, Gaara told her. He knew that from experience. Gaara's right, Sokka agreed, figuring out the truth. Toph can't tell who's lying because they both think they're telling the truth. Jet's been brainwashed. That's crazy. It can't be, Jet denied. He then noticed that everyone was beginning to enclose upon him. Stay away from me. They didn't listen. It was dark outside, and everyone was in their own home. A Daily agent walked down the street, patrolling the city. Out of my way, Skinny, a voice declared behind him. The blue spirit ran by, shoving the agent out of the way. Watching him turn into an alley, the agent gave chase. When he came to the front of the alley, he saw the blue spirit standing in the middle of the alley, swords drawn and obviously expecting a fair fight. The agent launched one of his rock gloves at the blue spirit's chest, making a hole, and launched the other at the spirit's head, knocking clean off. As the head landed, it was revealed that it was only a dummy. Huh? The agent asked before feeling a sword at his neck. If you don't want to end up like him, you'll do what I'll say, the blue spirit threatened the agent as he stood behind him. They took Jet to a building where the Daily would not go looking for them. To ensure that they didn't get sneaked up on, Momo and Akela stood outside and kept watch. The Daily must have sent Jet to mislead us. And that janitor was a part of their plot too, Katara said. This is becoming a drag, Shikamaru said to himself. Just pay attention, little boy, Temari told him. I bet they have Appa here in the city, Aang said, thinking it over. Maybe he's in the same place they took Jet. Where did they take you? He asked Jet, who was sitting in a chair. Nowhere, answered Jet. I don't know what you're talking about. He knew that he had been in the city and living peacefully. He didn't know anything about the Daily. We need to find a way to jog his real memories, the air nomad muttered. That was probably the only way they were going to get anywhere. Ino, get to work, Asuma ordered his student. Understood. Everyone, give me some room. They did as they were told. Shintenshin no Jutsu, mind-body switch technique, she said, her hands flashing through the hand seals. The first thing she saw in his mind as she tried to work the memory block out was the memory of his home burning to the ground. He was a child and could do nothing as he watched his family burn to death, their screams still reaching his ears. No! He screamed, lurching forward and sending Ino back into her own body. It's too painful, don't ever do that again. He all but yelled at her. Ino, are you okay? Choji asked, concerned for his teammate. Yeah, I'm fine, she said, getting up from where she fell. I'm just surprised that a guy who doesn't know anything about chakra was able to push me out. It must have been quite the powerful memory for him to do such a thing. Were you able to get into his memories? Shikamaru asked. She shook her head. Not fully. I only managed to loosen the grip of the memory block, but I don't think he'll let me in again. Maybe this will help. Katara walked behind Jet, bent water out of her pouch and held it to his ears, trying to heal his mind. Ino walked up to him and repeated her jutsu, going into his mind again. He sat there, looking at the floor. His vision began to get blurry, so he tried to look up. When he did, he saw the floor give way to water and saw a man standing on the water. Before he could get a good look at the man, he disappeared under the water. What he saw next were only flashes. He saw an underground tunnel and a Daily agent with a light circling around him. They took me to a headquarters under the water, he said as he opened his eyes. Like a lake. Wait, Sokka said as he remembered the last conversation with Judy. Remember what Judy said? She said she went on vacation to Lake Laogai. That's it. Lake Laogai, said Jet as he stood up. Now we know where to go, Aang said. We should head for the monorail and make our way to the lake, Asuma told them. That was going to be the fastest way to get there. It'll take us some time to get there, Gaara said. We should rest once we get to the lake area and we begin our search in the morning. It was a sound idea, one they all agreed with. As they made their way to the monorail station and took it out to the closest station to the lake, they found a nearby inn and went to sleep. They practically had to knock out Aang because he couldn't go to sleep and kept everyone else up. They had a quick breakfast and then made their way to the lake. So, where's the secret headquarters? Sokka asked. All he saw was a lake. Under the water, I think, Jet answered, scratching his head. The memory he had now was a bit fuzzy. So how will we get in? Shia asked. I'm hoping you're not thinking about having us swim out into the middle of the lake and then dive. Why? Are you afraid of water? Temari asked her. It's not exactly easy to swim with these. She pointed to her breasts. There's a tunnel right there near the shore, Toph told them, pointing to the spot. She walked to the shore, whistling as she went. When she reached the edge of the shore, she brought up a slab of rock with earth bending. At the end of the slab was a stone that looked like it was covering something. Toph moved the stone to reveal a hole with a long ladder leading down. Momo flew away, not wanting to go underground. Akela, Sokka told the wolf, stay out of sight. Akela nodded in agreement and headed back to the shore. They made their way down the ladder and into the headquarters. Jet led the way. It's all starting to come back to me, he whispered. His memories were becoming clearer and clearer as they walked through the eerily lit tunnels. They passed by a slightly open door and took a quick look inside. What they saw scared them. I'm Judy. Welcome to Ba Sing Se, a Daily agent said as he stood in front of several women. I'm Judy. Welcome to Ba Sing Se, they repeated with a monotone voice. We're so lucky to have our walls to create order. We're so lucky to have our walls to create order, they repeated with the same voice. By the spirits, that's terrifying, Shia whispered as she looked through the door. How could they do this? They were taking women and turning them into dolls. The rat only wishes to have power and control, Gaara told her. He does not care about the methods to get them. He was disgusted by what he was seeing. Even he had been treated better as a child than those women were now, and that was saying something. That's why we have to stop him, Sokka said. They needed to bring Long Feng down so the Earth King could learn about the war and to prevent anything like this ever happening again. Shia was silent for a minute. Sokka, can you promise me something? She finally asked. The tribesman turned to face her. It was the first time she used his name. What? Promise me that I won't become a Jew D. She looked back to the door and quickly whipped her eyes away. She sounded scared at the idea of becoming something like that. Don't worry, you won't. I think there might be a cell big enough to hold Appa up ahead, Jet told them. They soon came across the door he mentioned. I think it's through here. He opened the door. The sky bison was chained to the floor. After finally escaping the sandbenders and having bad experiences, which ranged from hunger to a Fire Nation circus, Appa had made it to Ba Sing Se, only to be captured by Long Feng. The only one who had gotten closest before now was Momo, who found the location where Appa was taken. But that was it. Now, he was in a dark room, lighted by the palest light, and chained to the floor so that he could not fly. The door to the cell opened and he opened his eyes, hoping that it was Aang. But what he got was a person wearing a blue mask. He stood up into a defensive position and growled at the person. He knew who it was just by his scent. Expecting someone else? The blue spirit asked, walking into the room and drawing his swords. They all walked through the door and into the room. It was big, empty, and dark. Despite all that, they couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone in the room. Their fear became true when the door behind them closed and the room lit up, revealing daily agents hanging from the ceiling and walls. Now that's something different, Sokka commented as his boomerang was quickly drawn. Next thing you know, it'll be raining men, Ino said, agreeing with the tribesman. Of which I think you'll love every minute, Temari told her. You have made yourselves enemies of the state, Long Feng announced, standing before them with daily agents standing behind him. Take them into custody, he ordered the daily. They dropped down from the ceiling and encircled the group. Two of the daily acted first by bending their rock gloves at the group, which then turned into fists. Toph shattered the gloves by earthbending them, which allowed Temari and Kankuro to get in close and take them down. Kankuro knocked the legs from underneath the one he was fighting while Temari used her folded-up fan as a club, knocking two more daily agents unlucky enough to get closer to her. Jet and Shiya charged two other daily agents, who also launched their rock gloves at them. Jet shattered them with his sword and slid past one of them, using his hook sword to trip up one of the agents. Shiya punched the other agent hard in the stomach, sending him flying into the wall. Aang dealt with agents with both their bending and earth bending. Sokka and Katara also destroy a pair of rock gloves but got caught by the second pair. They started to get dragged towards the daily agents who had fired the gloves but were saved when Toph bent a rock wall between them and the agents. They tried sending a rock line at her, but she bent the earth beneath her upwards into a column. The two agents went after her using columns, along with two other agents running up opposite sides of the walls. They bent columns out of the walls and sent straight at Toph. She took down the first pair easily, jumped over the columns coming from the walls and took out the other two. However, a rock glove caught from behind, making her fall back to the ground and towards the agent bending the glove. She was saved by Jet, who was using a steel chain to swing past her. The agent fired off a rock shoe after the two, but Longshot destroyed the shoe with an arrow. Two other agents joined the first and bent more rocks at them. Jet leapt over Longshot's back and destroyed the rocks with his hook swords. The agents were about to bend another round of rocks at them but were grabbed by their legs and thrown at the wall by sand. Toph, Jet and Longshot turned and saw the sand coming out of Gaara's gourd. Gaara wasn't moving himself, but whenever a rock glove, or shoe, was sent at him, the sand would protect him from the attack. He gave them a nod and then went to help Team Asuma. Long Feng just watched all this happen. When he realized that the odds were not going to be in his favor, he left through the door, closing it behind him. Aang saw him leaving. Long Feng is escaping, he yelled out. He went after him with Jet and Shiya behind him, blowing the door apart with earth bending. They chased after Long Feng, entering a room that pipes in the walls and water coming out of them. They looked around for Long Feng, only to hear and see the door seal them in. Long Feng dropped down in front of the sealed door. All right, Avatar, you've caused me enough problems, he said, completely annoyed. This is your last chance, if you want your bison back. You do have Appa. Tell me where he is, Aang demanded. Agree to exit the city now, and I'll waive all charges you and allow you to leave with your lost pet. He practically ordered the air nomad. How about you give us the bison and I don't smash your face in as well as making you unable to have children? Shiya threatened, holding up her fists to emphasize her point. You're in no position to bargain, Jet told Long Feng, readying his hook swords. Am I not? He asked with a calm and confident smirk on his face. You're definitely not, Aang told him, readying his staff. He was outnumbered and outmatched. Jet, the Earth King has invited you to Lake Laogai. Jet went still as his eyes dilated. I am honored to accept his invitation, he intoned with an emotionless voice. He turned on the others. They dodged his swings but were still surprised. What's the matter with you, Jet? Shiya demanded. Jet's only reply was to charge them. Appa growled at the blue spirit, stomping his front feet to warn him off. You're mine now, the blue spirit said. Hearing the door behind him open, he turned and readied his swords for a fight. But who he saw next was not someone he was expecting. Uncle? Iroh stood at the door, closing it behind him. So, the blue spirit, he said. I wonder who could be behind that mask. The blue spirit sighed, lowered his swords and took off his mask, revealing Zuko's face. "What are you doing here?" "I was just about to ask you the same thing," his uncle replied. "What do you plan to do now that you've found the Avatar's bison? Keep it locked in our new apartment? Should I go put on a pot of tea for him?" Uncle's using sarcasm. He's never done that, Zuko thought. But while surprising, that wasn't important. He turned his attention back to the bison. "First I have to get it out of here." "And then what?" Iroh shouted. "You never think these things through. This is exactly what happened when you captured the Avatar at the North Pole. You had him and then you had nowhere to go. I would have figured something out," he protested. "No!" the Dragon of the West yelled at him. "If his friends hadn't found you, you would have frozen to death." He growled slightly in frustration and looked away. "I know my own destiny, Uncle." He had to bring the Avatar to the Fire Nation. He had to go home. "Is it your own destiny? Or is it a destiny someone else has tried to force on you?" "Stop it, Uncle! I have to do this." He faced the bison. That was what he had to focus on. With it, he was even closer to taking the Avatar captive. "I'm begging you, Prince Zuko," Iroh said, using his title, something he hasn't done since they had first traveled to Ba Sing Se. "It's for you to look inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. Who are you and what do you want?" Zuko's emotions ran rampant. He tried to calm them, but he just couldn't. Not being able to take it anymore, he gave a frustrated yell and threw the swords and the mask to the ground. His yell echoed all around them, bouncing off the walls. It almost seemed mocking. Jet kept coming at both Aang and Shuya, swinging wildly. "Jet, it's me, Aang," Aang told him as they dodged. "You don't have to do this." "I'm afraid he no longer has a choice," Long Feng said smugly. "You can it!" Shuya shouted. She tried to charge him, but Jet attacked them again. Aang and Shuya moved out of his swings. They didn't want to get hit by them. Aang sent him skidding back with a blast of air. "Jet, I'm your friend," he said. "Look inside your heart." Jet shook his head, like he was trying to clear it. "Do your duty, Jet," Long Feng commanded him. He walked towards the two and stopped, breathing heavily. "He can't make you do this," Aang told him. "You're a freedom fighter." Those words caused Jet to remember everything those words meant, the thought of his friends, what they did and why they chose to do it. The memories started to blur together, and he kept seeing Long Feng's face interspaced between the memories. Finally, the haze of memories cleared, and Jet returned to normal. Long Feng did not see this. "Do it! Do it now!" he commanded. Jet responded by throwing one of his hooked swords at him like a spear. Long Feng sidestepped and responded by bending a rock line at Jet. It struck him hard in the chest, sending him to the ground. Both Aang and Shuya saw this when the dust cloud finally cleared. They over to Jet as Long Feng bent a rock column upwards and leapt into a pipe. "Foolish boy," he said. "You've chosen your own demise." "Don't run away, you coward!" Shuya shouted, going after him. But the column had dropped back into the ground and Long Feng had disappeared into the pipe. "I'm sorry, Aang," Jet croaked out as both Aang and Shuya knelt beside him. They could tell just how he was breathing that he was in pain. "Don't be," Aang told him. "It wasn't your fault," Shuya agreed. The door to the room opened, letting the rest of the group in. They were all shocked to see Jet lying on the floor. They rushed over to him, gathering around his body. Katara bent the water out of her pouch and covered her hands with it. She placed them over Jet's chest. "This isn't good," she declared after a few minutes. She knew that the injuries were extensive. Ino knelt and did her own diagnostic, her hands glowing with green chakra. "She's right," she finally said, letting her chakra dissipate. "Not even Lady Tsunade or Sakura could save him, there's too much damage." "I'm sorry," she told Smellerby and Longshot. "Don't be," Smellerby replied. "You guys go and find Appa. We'll take care of Jet." "We're not going to leave you," Katara told them. "There's no time. Just go. We'll take care of him. He's our leader," Longshot replied, speaking for the first time, surprising everyone. "Don't worry, Katara," Jet said to her. "I'll be fine." He gave a small smile. She closed her eyes, stopping herself from seeing her, and stood up from where she knelt. Ino did the same thing. They walk away from him and his freedom fighters. "He's lying," Toph whispered to Sokka. He didn't say anything in response. They walked away through another door, not looking back to see Smellerby crying or Longshot standing guard with an arrow ready. They finally found the cell that held Appa. They opened it only to find an empty room. Appa's gone, Aang said. Long Feng beat us here. If we keep moving, maybe we can catch up with him, Sokka stated. They all ran out of the room and found a nearby exit. Toph bended up to the surface and broke through the stone, serving as a blocker. They jumped out of the hole and saw Kella running towards them. We have to keep moving, Asuma ordered. They all started running down the path when both Aang and Shikamaru noticed that there were Dai Li coming out of the exit and chasing them. We've got Dai Li agents on our 6, Shikamaru told them, quickly looking back at them to count how many there were. You think we can outrun them? She asked. She had also looked back to see how many were behind them. I don't think it's going to matter, Choji answered. In front of them stood a line of Dai Li along with Long Feng. There were also Dai Li along the cliff on their right. The agents in front of them bent a large wall to rise so that they were blocked. They hung to the wall while Long Feng stood on top of it. When they stopped, the Dai Li behind them did the same thing. They had been blocked in, except for the shinobi, who could walk on the water. Spirits take it, Sokka swore aloud as he looked around, seeing all the agents and Long Feng. Do we have any options? Momo flew down onto Aang's shoulder, making noises at them. What is it, Momo? Aang asked. Momo took off from his shoulder and flew into the sun. Akela raised his nose up and sniffed the wind. His lips curled back into a wolfish grin. He threw his head and howled to the sky. The Dai Li agents shivered at the howl. It almost sounded like a battle cry. After Akela was done, silence reigned supreme. Then, from above they heard a roar that seemed to answer Akela's howl. From the direction of the sun, a certain sky bison flew down to them. Appa! Cried Aang with joy. Appa smashed through both walls, sending Dai Li everywhere. Aang and Toph took care of the ones on the wall by bending the area of the cliff they were on to jet out, sending them flying into the drink. After Appa had smashed through both walls, he turned around and landed on the ground. As Long Feng stood back up, he saw that the Dai Li had gotten away. He then turned around and came face to face with a very, very, very pissed-off sky bison. I can handle you by myself, he declared. He charged at Appa, bending the earth to form a ramp beneath him. He threw a kick at the sky bison, but all Appa had to do to stop him was bite down on his leg. He tossed Long Feng out into the water, making him skip like a stone before finally sinking into the water. Appa stood there for a few seconds and then spat out Long Feng's shoe. Then he turned his head towards the group, causing them, except for the Sand siblings and Shiya, who had never met him, to run forward and circle around him. He sat down and let them get close. Sokka hugged his arm while Akela and Momo jumped onto his head. Aang leapt onto his forehead, trying to hug him for all he's worth. I miss you, buddy, he said, tears of joy flowing freely down his face. Appa closed his eyes in contentment. So that's a sky bison, Shiya said as she looked at Appa. Truly, an impressive creature, Gaara commented. There were a very few creatures he had seen in his life who could match the one in front of him. Sokka lifted his head from Appa's leg, seeing that they hadn't moved from where they stood. Come on guys, get over and meet Appa, he told them. They walked over and placed a hand on Appa. When he didn't growl at them, things went more smoothly. A few minutes later, Appa was flying over the water with passengers on board. Katara looked down at the water, remembering Jet. She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned around to see Aang, Toph and Sokka. The four of them on Appa's head gave a group hug while the others stayed on Appa's back. Appa himself just lowed in contentment. Akela woofed in agreement. They climbed out of the hole that served as an entrance. You did the right thing, nephew, Iroh told him. Zuko didn't reply, he just took out the mask of the blue spirit and looked at it. Leave it behind, Iroh told him. He walked to the edge and tossed the mask into the water. After he watched sink into the water, he and Iroh left. Naruto stood on the cliff, watching as the sky bison flew away. Hook, line, and sinker, he said with a smirk. Chapter 16. To Dream and to Convict. Location Ba Sing Se. They had landed on a small island in the middle of the lake. Due to his weeks on his own, Appa had some trouble readjusting to carrying multiple people on his back. Everyone else wanted to take a break, so they agreed to land on the island. I miss you more than you'll ever know, buddy, Aang told Appa, once again hugging his forehead. Momo did the same thing. Appa just responded, licking Aang with his tongue, making him laugh. Hey, Arrowhead, called out Shia. Enough with the hug fest, we've got more important things to worry about. Shia is right, Sokka said. We should go to the Earth King and tell him our plan. We're on a mission here, and we cannot delay any longer. Akela barked in agreement. 1 good hour after weeks of trouble isn't much of a roll, Katara told him. She would barely call it a step. Sure, they got Appa back, but that was one good thing against a lot of other things. A roll is a roll, Asuma told her. You just have to build on it. Sometimes that was what a person needed to achieve victory, to keep moving. Speaking of rolls, Choji said. Does anyone have any food? Shikamaru handed him some jerky. Here, eat this. Thanks. Look, Sokka told his sister, if we want to invade the Fire Nation when the eclipse happens, we'll need the Earth King's support. That was the whole idea of coming to Ba Sing's southeast in the first place, before losing Appa and trying to get around Long Feng happened. What makes you think we'll get it? Toph asked him. I don't know if you've noticed, but things don't go that smoothly for our group. Usually, they encountered problem after problem. It does not matter if what your plan goes smoothly or not, Gaara told her. It only matters if your plan works. That was what mattered in the end, if the plan worked or not. Gaara, Long Feng is control of the city, Katara told him. His conspiracy with the Dai Li is too powerful. I think we should just keep flying and leave this horrible place behind us. I'm with Sweetness, Toph agreed. I've seen enough of Ba Sing say. And I can't even see. She threw her hands up to emphasize her point. She felt a bop on her head for those words. Don't be a downer, Toph, Shia told her, despite getting a glare from the blind earthbender. We can turn this around. And don't worry about the Dai Li, Sokka said confidently. I've got that covered. He still had that ace. Aang joined the group once he was done getting reattached to Appa. And now that we have Appa back, there's nothing stopping us from telling the Earth King the truth. About the conspiracy and the war, he said to them all. Sokka supported what the air nomad said. It's the whole reason we came here in the first place. We have to try. If they didn't try, what was the point? Katara thought it over. Well, I guess if the Earth King knew the truth, things could change, she reasoned. Things could change for the better. I don't trust the new positive Sokka, Toph said as she stood up. Long Feng brainwashed you, didn't he? She accused, pointing a finger at the tribesman. Hey Temari, can I borrow your iron club? Shia asked the Suna Kunoichi. I think the resident rockhead needs a harder whack on the head. It's not a club, it's a fan, Temari retorted, sounding a little offended by those words. And yet you have used it as a club, Kankuro commented. He had seen her use it like it was giant club, hitting her enemies away. Do you want me to brain you? She threatened, reaching for her fan. He pointed an accusing finger at her. There? You see? That's what I'm talking about. Temari, stop threatening to brain Kankuro, Gaara told her. Kankuro, stop antagonizing Temari. Sorry, Gaara, the two said. You know what the funniest thing about this is? Ino said to her team. He's the youngest. She would have thought that the elder siblings would be pressing down on him. But instead, it was the other way around. Ino, you're not helping, Shikamaru told his teammate. Aang saw something in the water. He ran closer to the shore to get a better look and saw that it was a couple of ships. They were far away, but close enough for those on the island to see them. That's probably the Dai Li searching for us, Sokka said as the others joined Aang in looking at the ships. Then let's fly, Katara declared, having made her choice. And fly they did. Aang had Appa pour on the speed as they flew back towards the city. Due to the lack of a saddle, everyone had to hold on for their lives, an idea that didn't really appeal to some, but exhilarated others. Can we please buy a new saddle? Toph begged. Riding bareback is terrifying. All she could see was Appa, and at the speed they were going, it wasn't helping her. Are you kidding? This is great. Shia whooped. She had never flown on a sky bison before. She loved every single minute of it. They flew to the center of the city, heading straight for the Earth King's palace. There it is, Sokka stated, pointing at the building in the center, while also holding onto Akela, who shared Toph's opinion of riding bareback. That whole thing is the palace. The Earth King's chamber should be in the center. We have to be careful, Katara told them. Longfang's probably warned the king that we're coming. What makes you say that? She asked. It seems to me that we're going to fly nice and look out. She screamed the last part as a boulder almost hit them. What was that? Toph demanded. Surface-to-air rocks, answered Sokka as he looked down and saw earthbender teams from the Royal Guard with rocks at the ready. More incoming. As he spoke, more and more of the rocks the teams had were being thrown at them. Temari, can you help? Gaara asked as Appa began to do evasive maneuvers to avoid the rocks coming at them. If we were flying straight and steady, yes, she answered. If they had that, she could send those rocks right back at them. But since they weren't, she couldn't. The Royal Guards kept launching SARs at the Sky Bison. One looked like it was about to hit Aang, but he shattered it via earthbending without even looking at it. Another came at him, this he split it in half using his staff. Seeing that another batch of the Royal Guards was waiting to attack them when they landed, he leapt from Appa and landed on the ground. As he landed, he bent the surrounding tiles to heave the soldiers up into the air as well as scattering them. It only left the captain, who was sitting in armored ostrich horse. All Appa had to do to scare him off was growl. Everyone else got off Appa and they made their way forward to the palace. On both sides of them, Royal Guards lined and bent cubes of earth at them. Aang, Toph and Gaara worked together to destroy the cubes, Aang using his staff, Toph using her earthbending and Gaara using his sand, while still moving forward. Katara and Kankuro cleaned up shop in the back. Katara used her waterbending to knock the Royal Guards down while Kankuro used chakra threads to slam Royal Guards into each other. Sorry. Katara apologized as she hit guardsmen after guardsmen. In front of them came more guardsmen. Toph took care of them by earthbending the tiles to flip over and pin them. Sorry. We just need to get through to see the Earth King. Would you stop apologizing? Demanded Shia. It's weird. They made their way to the palace. In their path was a river, with 3 bridges connecting one side to the other. The other side held the stairs leading up to the palace. While guardsmen gathered on the other side of the river to stop Team Avatar, the next level on the staircase also had royal guards. The guardsmen worked as one and bent 2 badger mole statues off the ground and hurled it at Team Avatar. Both Aang and Toph managed to block the 2 statues by earthbending the tiles to form a shell over them. The 2 statues shattered against the shell, but it held. Katara was the first to move out of the shell and towards the river. Bending the water out of her pouch, she bent it into a thin half-bridge made of ice. Using the ice bridge, she leapt over the guardsmen there while also bending water out from the river. Swinging her foot in a kicking motion, she bent the water to push the guardsmen into the river. Then she bent it into a water whip and pulled the guardsmen from the next level on the stairs into the river as well. As this occurred, the others made their way across the bridge while Aang leapt over the river and froze the water with their bending, trapping the guardsmen there. Everyone gathered but quickly turned their heads above as rocks started to rain down on them. There were also guardsmen coming down the stairs. Toph stepped forward and raised her hands, making the earth rumble. As a SAR smashed beside her, she drew her hands back and bent the stairs leading up to the palace to flatten into a ramp, making all the guardsmen on the stairs to slide down. Aang and Toph then bent a chunk of the ground to lift everyone to the stair-turn ramp. They went up the ramp, they passed all the guardsmen who had been caught on the stairs and who were now sliding down to the ground. Seriously, we're actually on your guys' side, Sokka told them as they went past. But the only thing they could answer were screams of surprise and pain. Sorry, the tribesman finally said after watching this for a few minutes. Oh great, now you've got the Ice Chura apologizing as well, Shia accused Katara. They reached the top of the staircase, where 2 groups of royal guards were waiting. Aang and Toph both reacted by pushing them away with earth bending. In there, Sokka told everyone as they charged into the palace. They soon entered a junction that had 3 other exits. More guardsmen entered but were easily defeated when Toph bent the floor to shoot up into columns and pin the guardsmen to the ceiling. Sokka and Shikamaru paused to look around. Toph, which way to the Earth King? How should I know? She asked. You're the one who can see everything with feet, Temari told her. She had seen the blind earthbender move around without running into anything before. I agree, although I'm in favor of splitting up to cover more ground, Shikamaru insisted. Not all of us will need to go in one direction. Well, I'm still voting we leave Ba Sing Se. She continued to demolish the guardsmen that kept coming. Sokka and Shikamaru decided to check every door. They didn't have much success. Sokka opened one door and saw that it was a woman's dressing room, which already had a woman in there, dressed, thankfully. After she had fainted, Sokka closed the door and apologized. Zuko and Iroh entered their apartment, getting back from Lake Laogai. You did the right thing, letting the Avatar's bison go free, Iroh told Zuko. Zuko staggered away from the door. I don't feel right, he said. His vision of the room blurred. He tried to clear it by blinking, but that didn't help. Turning his head, he saw a familiar face, one that had died at Akawan. Shang, what are you? He collapsed to the ground, breaking a pot in the process. Zuko! Cried Iroh as he rushed over to his fallen nephew. They had managed to beat all the royal guardsmen, while also causing a bit of a mess in the process. Sokka climbed over some debris and saw a big, fancy door that was untouched. Now that's an impressive door, he declared. It's gotta have to go somewhere. He looked over at the resident earthbenders. Aang, Toph, would you mind? The two went to the door and knocked it down. They all ran into the room, which turned out to be the throne room, which was quite big. Beneath a giant badger mole statue at the other end of the room, sat the Earth King. Standing in front of the Earth King was Long Feng and a group of Dai Li agents. Everyone prepared themselves for a fight. We need to talk to you, Aang declared to the Earth King. They're here to overthrow you, Long Feng told the Earth King. No, we're not, Shuya shouted. We're on your side, Sokka said. We're here to help. You have to trust us, Katara agreed. The Earth King stood up from his throne. You invade my palace, laid waste to all my guards, break down my fancy door, and you expect me to trust you? He asked them like he couldn't believe what they had just said. He has a good point, Toph pointed out. We weren't exactly expecting a warm welcome, Choji told her. We were right too, Ino agreed. They had been expecting resistance to try and stop them. The evidence of that was right behind them. If you're on my side, the Earth King told them, then drop your weapons and stand down. Everyone shared a look when they heard those words, but they complied. Aang dropped his staff, Sokka dropped his machete, Katara bent her water back into her pouch, and Toph bent the rock she held back into the earth. Sokka, Choji, and Ino put the kunai they held away while Asuma did the same with his chakra blades. Shia lowered her fists, Kankuro put his hands down, and Temari folded up her fan. Gaara simply folded his arms. See? Aang said to him. We're friends, your earthiness. Really, Arrowhead? Asked Shia. Your earthiness? That probably one of the dumbest nicknames she had ever heard of. I guess the Avatar did not receive a lesson on how to address someone above his station, Choji commented. Aang and Katara glared at him for his comment, even though they both agreed that it was sadly true. The Earth King did nothing. Long Feng, however, did do something. He simply raised his hand, and the Dai Li agents bent their rock gloves at the group, cuffing their hands behind their backs. Long Feng gave a smug smile. Detain the assailants, he ordered. The Dai Li slid forward to the group, intent on following their orders. They were about to grab them when sand blasted out of Gaara's gourd and grabbed the Dai Li agents. If you move, the sand will crush you, he warned them. His arms and hands might be trapped, but he could still use his sand. Don't kill them, Gaara, Temari told her little brother. If you do, more might be summoned. And if that happened, they would really be in trouble. A few Dai Li they could handle. All of them would be stretching it. Very well. The sand released the agents and flew back into the gourd. The Dai Li rushed behind them and grabbed their shoulders. We're your allies, Sokka tried to tell the Earth King as he struggled to get out of the Dai Li's grip. Make sure that the Avatar and his friends never see daylight again, Long Feng commanded the Dai Li. Even though he didn't show it, he was silently smug about what just happened. The Earth King was surprised at what his man said. The Avatar? You're the Avatar? He asked Sokka. Sokka looked at Aang. No, he's the Avatar. Over here, the air nomad said, bending his arms free of the rock cuffs and raising them before putting them back into the cuffs. You could do that at any time? Shiya demanded. You could have broken us out of these things. He gave a sheepish laugh. Sorry, didn't think about it. She rolled her eyes in exasperation. You are an idiot. What does it matter, Your Highness? Long Feng asked the Earth King. They are enemies of the state. Perhaps you're right, the Earth King agreed. Meanwhile, his pet bear had padded over to Aang and licked his face, making him laugh. Though Bosco seems to like him, he idly commented. The bear sniffed the air and then turned to face Shiya. He sniffed the air again, gave a grunt of excitement, and ran into Shiya, knocking her to the ground. To the surprise of everyone, he didn't maul her. He kept nuzzling her and grunting with happiness. "Get off of me, you furry lump!" she shouted, trying to wiggle out from under the bear. "Bosco!" shouted the Earth King. Bosco got off Shia, allowing her to stand up. "What in the name of all the spirits was that about?" she shouted at the bear. "Why did you suddenly try to squish me? How do you even know me? The only bears I know are that one mother bear and her." She trailed off as she looked at Bosco. "No way, you couldn't be." She looked at the Daily behind her. "Hey, get these things off of me." She wiggled her arms. "No," the agent answered. "Oh, relax. I'm not going to attack you. I want to check something. Now get these things off." "Let her go," the Earth King ordered. Long Feng had a small look of surprise on his face, but quickly suppressed it. The Earth King had never interfered with what he did, and he never ordered the Daily before. The Daily agent bent the rock cuffs off. She walked towards the bear with caution. She stretched her hand towards Bosco and laid it on his head. When he didn't react, she brought the hand to his left ear and gently turned it over, so she could see the back. On the back of the ear was a little patch of white fur shaped like a star. "You brown, overgrown fur ball," was the first thing out of her mouth before she tackled him to the ground, hugging him. "This is where you've been all this time. Restrain that girl," Long Feng barked out. The Daily pulled her off the bear and recuffed her. The bear moaned quietly in disappointment when he saw this. "You know Bosco?" the Earth King asked her with genuine curiosity. Most people who met Bosco thought he was a freak of nature. But she reacted like he was an old friend. "Know him?" Shia repeated. "I've slept with this bear." Silence reigned in the throne room. "Okay, that came out wrong," she admitted. "What do you mean, slept with?" Ino asked her. That needed some clarification right away. "You guys remember that story? About how I spent a winter with a bear and her cub?" asked Shia. Everyone, minus the Sand siblings, nodded. "Meet the cub." She looked at Bosco, who waved a paw at them. "This doesn't matter," Long Feng said. "Take them away." "Wait, I'll hear what they have to say," the Earth King declared. When they heard those words, the Daily stopped what they were doing and waited. His advisor frowned ever so slightly. Aang stepped forward, silently volunteering to be the spokesperson. "Well, sir, there's a war going on right now," he started to explain. "For the past 100 years, in fact. The Dailies kept it secret from you. It's a conspiracy to control the city and to control you." "A secret war?" asked the Earth King. "That's crazy. Wouldn't he have been the first to know if there was a war going on?" "Completely," agreed Long Feng. "Long Feng didn't want us to tell you, so he stole our sky bison to blackmail us," Aang continued. "And blackmail is the least of his crimes. He brainwashed our friend." The man in question turned to the king. "All lies," he said. "I've never even seen a sky bison, Your Majesty. Frankly, I thought they were extinct." The Earth King sat back down in his chair. "Your claim is difficult to believe. Even from an avatar," he told Aang. Long Feng stepped up to the side of the throne and bent down slightly. "These hooligans are part of an anarchist cell that my agents have been tracking for weeks," he whispered into the Earth King's ear. "If you listen to them, you're playing right into your own destruction." The Earth King was silent for a minute, thinking over all he had just heard from everyone. "I have to trust my advisor," he finally announced. Aang looked shocked as a Daily agent grabbed hold of him. The rest of the agents began to pull them away when Sokka made his move. "Hey, can you do me a favor?" he asked the Daily who was holding him. "Reach down the front of my shirt and pull out what you find." The Daily did as he was asked and pulled out the Paragon medallion for the rest of the Daily to see. "You get the point?" Sokka asked. "Yes, sir," the agent replied, only the faintest traces of shock and surprises evident in his voice. He certainly had not been expected to cuff one of his superiors. It went against everything he had been taught. When he quickly looked at his fellow agents, he could see they had not expected it either. "Then shouldn't you be releasing us from these cuffs?" He and his group were released from the rock cuffs almost immediately. "Thank you?" He turned to the Earth King. "Your Majesty, I can prove he's lying. Long Feng said he's never seen a sky bison. Ask him to lift his robe." "What? I am not disrobing," Long Feng retorted. The Earth King looked at his advisor with suspicion. It was a simple request, albeit an unusual one, and if he was innocent, why would he object? Gaara simply narrowed his eyes. The sand shot out of his gourd, flew over to Long Feng, and flipped his robe up over his head, revealing a mark on his left leg. Right there! Called out Aang. Appa bit him. Never seen a sky bison, huh? Sokka asked. Akela had a wolfish grin. Long Feng pushed his robe down. That happens to be a large birthmark. Thanks for showing everyone, he told them all. Well, I suppose there's no way to prove where those marks came from, the Earth King said. Of course there is, Sokka told him. They brought Appa into the room and had him open his mouth. Aang pointed at the teeth and then at the mark on Long Feng's leg. Yep, that pretty much proves it, the Earth King said. Team Avatar, minus the shinobi, who were professionals and kept their opinions to themselves, got excited. But it doesn't prove this crazy conspiracy theory, he told them. Team Avatar, minus the shinobi, who were professionals and kept their opinions to themselves, groaned. Though, I suppose this matter's worth looking into. Long Feng just scowled and walked away, the Dai Li following him. They had to make a few adjustments, and they had to make them fast. But even as they walked, some of the agents looked briefly back at the tribesmen. Zuko lay in bed, sweating. Iroh sat by his side. You're burning up, he said as he pulled a cloth out of water. You have an intense fever. This will help cool you down. He put the cloth on his nephew's forehead. So thirsty, Zuko croaked. It felt like his throat was on fire. He tried to sit up, but his uncle made him lay back down. Here's some clean water to drink. He pulled a ladle out of a bucket and held it against Zuko's mouth. Stay under the blankets and sweat this out. Zuko yanked the ladle out of Iroh's hands and gulped it down. He reached for the bucket and drank that too, spilling some of the water. When it was empty, he threw the bucket against the wall and lay back down. So this is what a train is like? The Earth King asked. I didn't realize it would be this public. He stood in the middle of the train car with royal guards behind him. His presence was shocking to the people in the train. So you've never been outside the upper ring before? Katara asked him. It was something she was having a hard time believing. I've never been outside the palace, he answered. It was a whole new experience for him. When he looked out the window, he smiled. Now that's the way to travel. He pointed to Aang riding Appa. So, may I ask where we're going? He asked them. Underneath Lake Laogai, Your Majesty. To the Dai Li's secret headquarters, Sokka answered. You're about to see where all the brainwashing and conspiring took place. They rode the monorail out to the same station as before and made their way to Lake Laogai. Once they were there, Toph brought the causeway and entrance with her earthbending, only to find it destroyed. It's gone, she said. The Dai Li must have known we were coming and destroyed the evidence, Katara stated. She couldn't believe that they had gotten there first. That seems awfully convenient, the Earth King told them, a frown on his face. If anything, this proves the conspiracy exists even more, Sokka said to him. Long Feng was right. This was a waste of time. He couldn't believe that he agreed to follow them. If you'll excuse me, I'm going back to the palace. He turned around and started to leave. Crap. We need to show him something that'll convince him, Shiya told the others. If they didn't, Long Feng would win and they would be back to square one, if they were that lucky. The wall, realized Katara. They'll never be able to cover that up in time. It was too damn big for that to happen quickly. Aang leapt up into the air and landed in front of the Earth King. If you come with us to the outer wall, we can prove to you that the secret war is real, he said, pleading with all he could. No Earth King has ever been to the outer wall, the Earth King replied. I don't have any more time for this nonsense. He continued walking up the hill. If you come with us, this time you can ride on Appa, Sokka offered. It stopped the Earth King in his tracks. Well, that got his attention, Asuma commented. But he couldn't blame the man. Flying on a sky bison was an offer very few could refuse. He's going to take the offer, Gaara stated. Are you sure about that? Kankuro asked his little brother. Yes. The Earth King did indeed take the offer. His screaming could be heard throughout the agrarian zone. First time flying? Asked Toph as she held onto Appa's fur. It's both thrilling and terrifying, he answered. Yeah, I hate it too. Right now, she was holding onto the sky bison for dear life and silently praying to whatever spirits would hear her to let her live. I have to be honest with you, he told Aang once he had calmed down some and was able to think again. Part of me really hopes that what you're telling me about this war isn't true. I wish it wasn't, Aang told him. But the fact remained. The war was real, and he needed to stop it. The fever was causing Zuko to dream. In his dream, he sat in the throne room of the Fire Lord. His hair was long and held the headpiece of the Fire Lord. The left side of his face held no scar. Standing at attention in front of him were soldiers of the 41 Division. 2 dragons, one red and one blue, appeared and started to circle around him. It's getting late, the blue dragon said in Azula's voice. Are you planning to retire soon, my lord? I'm not tired, Zuko said. He felt just fine. Relax, Fire Lord Zuko. Just let go. Give in to it. Shut your eyes for a while. His eyes began to droop, until the red dragon spoke. No, Fire Lord Zuko. Do not listen to the blue dragon. You should get out of here right now. Go! Before it's too late. Sleep now, Fire Lord Zuko, the blue dragon whispered in his ear. The throne room disappeared. The soldiers collapsed, revealing to be nothing more than suits of armor. Zuko looked around but only saw darkness. Then a pair of eyes flashed in the darkness, revealing the blue dragon. Sleep, just like Mother. It lunged at him, opening its mouth wide. The blue dragon disappeared, but Zuko heard someone else. Zuko! Help me! His mother's voice cried out. But before he could do anything, the floor ate him alive. In the real world, he started to sweat again. The sun was setting when they reached the outer wall. It's still there! Aang cried out as he pointed at the drill, which blocked off by a wall as big as it. What is that? The Earth King asked, shock lacing his voice. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, he didn't even know what it was he was seeing. It's a drill, Sokka told him. A giant drill made by the Fire Nation to break through your walls. They landed on the wall and looked down at the drill. I can't believe I never knew, the Earth King said. He had been led around by the nose and he went along with it willingly. As he stared down at the drill, he felt like a fool. It is not your fault, Gaara told him. You were blinded by a rat that wanted power and control over the city and you. The Kazekage could see that the Earth King was a man who had placed too much trust in an advisor who wanted to control him. He could also see that if he was given some proper lessons and training in how to rule, he would make a decent ruler. They heard an Earth elevator coming up, revealing Long Feng and 2 Dai Li agents. I can explain this, Your Majesty, Long Feng told him. This is nothing more than a construction project. Really? Asked Katara. Then perhaps you can explain why there's a Fire Nation insignia on your little construction project? The insignia was there for everyone to see. The Earth King eyed him suspiciously, waiting to hear his reply. Well, it's imported, of course. You know you can't trust domestic machinery, his advisor replied, trying to smile the problem off. I call bull. Complete and utter bull, Shia declared. What he had just said was stupid to say. If he knew about the war, why would he say that? I'm with her, Choji agreed. Yeah, same here, Tamari said. It's pretty stupid to import machinery from a country you're at war with, Kankuro said. There is no war, Long Feng told them, a small scowl on his face. You might as well stop, Gaara said. There is no way you can get yourself out of this one, Ino told him. He had cornered himself with that last explanation and they had him on it. Surely you don't believe these children over instead of your most loyal attendant? Long Feng asked the Earth King, turning the attention back to him. The Earth King wasn't sure what to do. Seeing that his confidence was failing, Sokka spoke up. Your Majesty, if you will not take care of him, I will. Long Feng scoffed at the notion that sentence carried. You don't have that kind of power, boy, he told the tribesman. He wasn't sure what happened in the throne room, but he was certain it was a fluke. As a matter of fact, I do. Dai Li. The Earth King placed a hand on his shoulder. No, Sokka. I will take care of this. He turned to Long Feng and the Dai Li agents. Dai Li. Arrest Long Feng. I want him to stand trial for crimes against the Earth Kingdom. He commanded. Both Long Feng and Team Avatar, minus the shinobi, who were professionals and kept their opinions to themselves, and Sokka, who saw it coming, were shocked at what the Earth King had said. The 2 Dai Li agents shared a look and then cuffed Long Feng with metal shackles. You can't arrest me, Long Feng protested. You all need me more than you know. The Dai Li agents pulled him away. All right, cheered Xia. Long Feng is long gone. That could have been better, Ino commented. It had sounded cheesy to the Yamanaka. Hey, it was the only one I could think of, she replied, trying to defend what she had said. I probably would have said the same thing, Sokka told them. See, the ice sure agrees with me. He frowned at those words. Are you ever going to stop calling me that? No, she replied with a straight face. A slow, almost mocking, clap was heard on the wall. Very impressive, Your Majesty, Naruto's voice rang out as he walked out of the nearby command post. It's nice to see you finally grow a backbone. He stopped and stood before the group, completely relaxed and confident. Who are you? The Earth King asked as the royal guardsmen moved in front of him. No need to panic, boys. I'm not going to attack him, the blonde told the guardsmen. As for who I am, pardon my rudeness. He bowed. I am the paragon of the Fire Nation and bodyguard to the Princess Azula. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. And in case you already haven't figured it out already, the war is real. I've been fighting in it for 3 years. Why are you here, Naruto? Asuma asked. His chakra blades out and ready to use. If the blonde was going to make an attempt on the Earth King, it wouldn't work. You know him? The Earth King asked, surprised by that. It was a day for him to be surprised. He used to be one of us, a shinobi, Choji explained to him. That is, until he was banished. I think you mean until I left, Naruto replied easily. The old hag never actually banished me, so technically the shinobi present could legally capture or kill me, and collect the bounty for it, although I don't know how much bounty would they place on someone like me. He looked over to where Gaara and his siblings stood. It's good to see you back among us, Gaara, he said with a somber tone. Naruto, Gaara greeted. There were no other words to say or that needed to be said. You didn't answer Asuma-sensei's question, Naruto, Ino spoke up, getting his attention. Why are you here? Oh, it's simple. I'm just getting rid of the trash. He turned to face the edge of the outer wall and walked towards it, stopping a few steps before the edge. You might want to give me a little more room. This is the first time I'm actually going to use this thing. He held out his hand and concentrated. A blue, spinning orb began to form in his hand. A Rasengan, thought the Konoha shinobi. They were surprised by the fact he could do it with a single hand, having thought that he needed a clone to help him with it. And now for the next step, he muttered. For large, white blades formed on the orb and everyone heard the very air itself being cut. Here we go. He leapt up into the air. If anyone had paid attention to his eyes, they would have noticed that they were crimson red instead of blue. Futon, Raisin Shuriken, Wind Style, Spiraling Shuriken. He cried out as he seemed to hover in the then he threw the jutsu down at the drill. He threw it. How can he throw something that dense with chakra? The shinobi thought to themselves. They had never seen anything like that before. The jutsu hit the drill and that was the last they ever saw of said drill. An explosion shaped like a giant sphere formed, obscuring everything within it and lashing out with violent winds. When the sphere disappeared, there was nothing left of the drill, or the low wall blocking it off. The only thing left was a very, very deep crater. Naruto landed back on the wall. Well, my work here is done. Bye. He walked away as everyone else was still looking at the crater. Everyone was too stunned by what they saw to try and stop him from leaving. They managed to regain their wits and decided to head back to the palace. By the time they regrouped in the throne room, night had fallen. I want to thank you, young heroes, for opening my eyes, the Earth King told them. They stood before the throne. Bosco lay next to Shie, who absently scratched his ear. All this time, what I thought was a great metropolis was merely a city of fools. And that makes me the king fool. He covered his eyes with his hand. We're at war, with the Fire Nation. He was still having a hard time believing it. That's why we came to Ba Sing Se, Your Highness. Because we think you can help us end the war, Sokka told him, walking forward. Akela padded forward as well and sat on his haunches. We don't have much time, he said. There's a comet coming this summer. Its energy will give the firebenders unbelievable strength. They'll be unstoppable. But there is hope, Sokka continued. Before the comet comes, we have a window of opportunity. A solar eclipse is coming. The sun will be entirely blocked out by the moon and the firebenders will be helpless. What are you suggesting, Sokka? The Earth King asked. It sounded like the tribesman had a plan, but he wasn't sure. That's the day we need to invade the Fire Nation. The day of Black Sun, he told the ruler of the Earth Kingdom. Oh, that's a good title, Shia said. Not bad, Shikamaru agreed. It was both dramatic and ominous. The Earth King thought it over. I don't know. That would require moving troops out of Ba Sing Se. We'd be completely vulnerable, he told them. Not to mention the power the Fire Nation Paragon wields could easily destroy the troops. You're already vulnerable, Sokka said to him. The Fire Nation won't stop until Ba Sing Se falls. You can either sit back and wait for that to happen or take the offensive and give yourself a fighting chance. And you also do not need to worry yourself about Naruto, Asuma said, trying to assure him. If he tries to attack us during the invasion, he'll be facing not only us, but also 2 other teams from Konoha as well as the Kazekage and his siblings. He was certain that they would be able to hold him down if they threw everyone against him. The Earth King contemplated the information he was given, staying silent. It still sounded like a risky plan to him, but they did have good points. Very well. You have my support, he announced, sending Team Avatar, minus the shinobi, who were professionals and kept their opinions to themselves, into victory cheers, and Aang going around on an air scooter. Your Majesty, a voice spoke out. An Earth Kingdom general walked in and bowed before the king. I apologize for the interruption. This is General Hao, the Earth King explained. He's the leader of the Council of 5, my highest-ranking generals. We searched Long Feng's office, General Hao said, raising his head up from the ground. I think we found something that will interest everybody. That got everyone's interest. They made their way to Long Feng's office. When they got there, a chest was presented to the Earth King. There are secret files on everyone in Ba Sing Se, including you kids, General Hao told Team Avatar. The exceptions seemed to be you 7. He looked at Team Asuma and the Sand siblings. We're not from this side of the planet, Asuma told the general. Information about us would be sketchy at best. Toph Beifong, the Earth King, read one of the scrolls. He handed it to Toph, who handed it to Katara. She opened it up and read it. It's a letter from your mom, she told Toph. Your mom's here in the city. And she wants to meet you. Long Feng intercepted our letters from home? Toph asked before shaking her head. That's just sad. The man had truly been paranoid. Aang, the Earth King, handed him a scroll. This scroll was attached to the horn of your bison when the Dai Li captured it, General Hao explained to the air nomad. Aang opened the scroll. Hi, it's from the Eastern Air Temple, he told everyone as he continued to read it. Is there a letter for me and Sokka by any chance? Katara asked, silently hoping for one. The Earth King looked through the chest. I'm afraid not. Sokka and Katara were disappointed by that piece of news. But there is an intelligence report that might interest you, General Hao said as he handed them a scroll. A small fleet of water tribe ships, Katara read the scroll's contents. What? Sokka asked as he looked over her shoulder. That could be Dad. Protecting the mouth of Chameleon Bay, led by Hakoda, Katara continued reading. It is Dad. Way to go, you two, Shia said with genuine happiness. You know where your dad is. That reminds me. The Earth King pulled out another scroll. Shia, this is addressed to you. It seems to be from your village. He held it out for her. What? She took the scroll and opened it. It's from the village leader. He says that the village will welcome me back with open arms now. She told them. As she read, she began to tremble. That's great news. Congratulations, Shia, Katara told her. Yeah, you must be happy that your village wants you back now, Ino agreed. Shia was still trembling and hadn't said a word. Shia? Aren't you excited? Aang asked. Those spirits damned, egoistical, rockheads. She yelled, fury lacing her voice. Everyone there then realized that she wasn't trembling with happiness, she was trembling with rage. They want me back? After all this time? Arg, I hate them. She stomped over to the fire and threw the scroll into it. What's the matter, Shia? Asuma asked as the scroll burned in the fire. They only want me back because I helped the Avatar destroy the drill, she growled. They want me back because I'm famous now, not because they want me. Feeling her side being nudged, she turned and saw Bosco at her side, worry and concern shining in his eyes. She fell to her knees and hugged his head, crying freely. Why? Why can't they just want me back for me? Why do they think I'm so useless? She asked the bear. No one really knew how to answer her. You should know that this is not a natural sickness, Iroh told Zuko as he poured tea. But that shouldn't stop you from enjoying tea. He fed the tea to Zuko. What's happening? Zuko asked. Something was going on with him, and he didn't know what it was. He felt like he was changing. Your critical decision, Iroh told him. What you did beneath that lake. It was in such conflict with your image of yourself that you are now at war within your own mind and body. What's that mean? You are going through a metamorphosis, my nephew. It will not be a pleasant experience, but when you come out of it, you will be the beautiful prince you were always meant to be. He placed another cloth on Zuko's head. Team Avatar, as well as the shinobi, regrouped the next morning in Long Feng's office. Xia was sitting against Bosco's side. Akela took a nap at Sokka's side. I can't believe it, Aang said as he reread the scroll. There's a man living at the Eastern Air Temple. He says he's a guru. What's a guru? A poisonous blowfish? Asked Sokka. It sounded like it was a name for a fish. No, a spiritual expert, Aang explained. He wants to help me take the next step in the Avatar journey. He says he can teach me to control the Avatar state. He looked at the scroll again and frowned. But there's also writing here I can't read. Let me have a look at it, Shikamaru said. Aang passed him the scroll. He took one look at the writing and his eyes widened. What is it, Shikamaru? Choji asked his friend. He simply handed the scroll to Gaara. It's addressed to you, he told the Kazekage. How would someone we've never met send a letter to Gaara? Temari asked. But Shikamaru didn't have a good answer for her. Gaara read the scroll until his eyes went wide as well. This guru says that he can help quiet what remains of Shikaku. He says he can help me finally sleep, he told his siblings. What? Are you serious? Kankuro asked. Gaara handed him the scroll. Read for yourself. Well? Temari asked as she looked over her brother's shoulder, trying to see what was on the scroll. He's right. That's what this guru guy says, the puppeteer shinobi told her. That was great news for their little brother. Who's Shikaku? Xia asked, the question getting everyone's attention, minus Team Asuma, who knew who Shikaku was. Well. Temari tried to come up with a good excuse but couldn't find one. Up until recently, I had something of a different personality, Gaara explained to Xia. If I were to fall asleep, the other personality would take control of my body. We called this other person Shikaku, and he was often insane and bloodthirsty. Whenever he took control, a bloodbath was soon to follow. Whether it was friends or enemies did not matter. Recently, there was an incident that resulted in Shikaku disappearing. But a shadow of him remains. Every time I've tried to fall asleep, he is there, torturing me with memories of we did. Why do you say we? Aang asked him. He's the one who would gladly kill a person. That is true, but people did not see it like that. They did not know of Shikaku, so they thought I was a bloodthirsty monster, he told the air nomad. They were silent for a few seconds, taking in what he had just said. I think you should go, Gaara Kankuro said. This could help you. Are you sure? Of course, Temari agreed. And we'll come with you. Gaara said nothing, he simply nodded his thanks. He was silently glad that they would be coming. Well, I can't believe we know where our dad is now, Katara said, holding the scroll that had the good news. I know what you mean, Toph said, holding her letter. My mom's in the city. And from her letter, it sounds like she finally understands me. At least, she was hoping that was the case. This is all such big news, Sokka said. Where do we even start? There were so many places to cover, and he didn't think they could all go to them. Perhaps it's best if you split up, Shikamaru suggested. Split up? Aang repeated. We just found Appa and got the family back together. Now you want us to separate? He asked the Konoha shinobi. He has a point. You and Gaara have to meet this guru, Aang, Katara told him, seeing the logic behind the suggestion. If we're going to invade the Fire Nation, you need to be ready. And Gaara should be allowed to actually sleep. She had seen him stay awake all night, even when the others had gone to sleep. He thought it over and he could see the logic as well. Well, if we're going to the Eastern Air Temple, Appa and I can drop you off at Chameleon Bay to see your dad, he offered the waterbender. Someone has to stay here with the Earth King and help him plan for the invasion, Sokka said. I can do that. Xia raised her hand. No, you're not going to stay and help the Earth King without someone watching you. Oh, come on, Aishur. You still don't trust me? She asked. Bosco threw a glare at Sokka and growled at him. Akela opened his eyes and returned the growl. There's no need to worry, Sokka, Asuma told him. We'll stay here and keep an eye on her. And I will too, Katara said, standing up. I'll stay here with the king. Sokka, I know how badly you want to help Dad. You go to Chameleon Bay. Sokka also stood up and gave Katara a big bear hug. You are the nicest sister ever, he declared with a giddy happiness. Easy there, big brother, she said, pushing him off. But you're right, I am. A servant walked into the room. The Earth King invites you to join for breakfast, he announced, before bowing and leaving the room. There's food? She asked, perking up. Bosco did the same thing, and the two of them shared a long, silent look. I call dibs on the meat, she declared before leaping up and running for the door. Bosco grabbed her by the leg and pulled her back, letting him to run out the door. He didn't get far before she had jumped on him and wrestled him to the ground, letting her take the lead. Everyone else was silent. I'm not the only one who saw that, right? Choji asked. Trust me, I saw it too, Ino replied. After getting breakfast, which included a food duel of sorts between Shuya and Bosco, everyone gathered near Appa to say goodbye. Aang walked over to Katara, who was petting Appa. Katara, I need to tell you something, he said as he began to blush. I've been wanting to say it for a long time. What is it, Aang? She asked. Before he could tell her, Kankuro slapped him on the back. Let's hit the air already, he said, earning a scowl from both his sister and Katara. He became confused by the scowls he was getting. What? The Earth King walked down the stairs to join them. Aang, Sokka, Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara, he began. I wish you a good journey. Ba Sig Se owes you its thanks. We look forward to your safe return. They saluted the Earth King. Sokka began to climb aboard when a soldier walked to the king. Your Majesty. There are 3 female warriors here to see you. They're from the Isle of Kyoshi, he told the Earth King. That's Suki, Sokka said in shock, falling from Appa. You know these warriors? The Earth King asked. Oh yeah, he answered as he stood back up. The Kyoshi warriors are a skilled group of fighters, trustworthy too. They're good friends of ours. Then we shall welcome them as honored guests. Aang moved to climb aboard Appa. Wait, Aang, Katara said, making him turn around. She gave him a hug and a kiss, making him blush. I'm really going to miss you guys, Toph told them. Aang and Katara gave her a hug as well. They then gave Sokka a group hug. Noticing Shuya's downcast expression, Sokka decided to do something. Get over here, Shuya, he told her. She brightened up and gave them all a big bear hug. After the hug fest was over, the groups parted ways. Location: Zuko and Iroh. Zuko awoke from his sleep, the fever gone. He stood up and noticed that Iroh was still asleep. Making his way to the bathroom, he washed his face. Looking up into the mirror, he gave a shout of surprise and took a step back. The person in the mirror had Zuko's eyes, but had no hair, no scar, and had an arrow tattoo on his head. He looked a lot like the Avatar. Oh! He screamed as he woke up. He panted for a minute, his eyes wide. He placed 2 fingers on the scar and, for once in his life, was glad that it was there. Appa flew away from the outer wall. What did I tell ya? Sokka asked everyone on Appa as he lay on his back, absently scratching Akela's ear. A little positive thinking works wonders. We got the king on our side, we got Long Feng arrested, and when we get back, Suki's waiting for me. Yeah, girls are waiting for us, Aang agreed. Thanks, positive attitude. When did he get a girl waiting for him? Kankuro asked aloud. Temari slapped him across the head. You were the one who interrupted their moment, she chastised him. Everything's gonna work out perfectly. From now on and forever, Sokka declared. Nothing ever works out perfectly, Gaara warned the tribesmen. Be careful about what you say. Long Feng sat alone in his cell. A Daily agent came to the door. Dinner, he stated, pushing a tray of extravagant food through the bottom flap. Long Feng grabbed a piece of food. The Council of 5 and the military are loyal to the Earth King, the agent said. But the Daily remains loyal to you, Long Feng, sir. Long Feng raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Then why did that water tribe peasant order you to let them go, and you obeyed? He asked the agent. The boy thinks he had control over us, but we are loyal to you, the agent repeated before leaving. Long Feng began to eat, a sinister smile growing on his face. Toph stood in front of a house. Taking a deep breath, she knocked on the door and the door opened on the 3rd knock. Hello? she called out as she walked in. Mom? Anyone home? She kept walking until she sensed something. But before she could do anything, a metal cage dropped on her, trapping her inside. Hey! Who do you think you're dealing with? One loud-mouthed little brat who strayed too far from home, a familiar voice told her. It was Xian Fu and Master Yu. The Earth King stood on a platform. A line of royal guards stood on either side of the platform. 3 Kyoshi warriors walked up the stairs and bowed to the Earth King. In our hour of need, the Earth King began. It is with the highest honor that I welcome our esteemed allies, the Kyoshi warriors. The Kyoshi warriors raised their heads, revealing them to be Azula, Tai Li, and Mai. We are the Earth King's humble servants, Azula said, her golden eyes looking at the Earth King.